Grand Rising, everybody. How you doing? This is your Coach Renz, and welcome to our Monday Night Live. Starting a few minutes late. If you're finding me for the first time, then what we discuss here are this is a Bible deconstruction channel, and although we allow anyone to be a part of the show, have communication within the comments, even come on live, we discuss our pathway, our life of deconstructing and historical information pursuant to that cause. Now, today we're going to be talking about a comparison between the biblical timeline and the actual timeline of the world and the history that we do know of. Just trying to get a few things straight here. We gave about 5 minutes to allow for people to get onto the show, and then we're going to get started. I tried to block off some of the noise from my laptop, but we are about to get started real soon. Get my cigar ready. But like I said, we give about 5 minutes for people to come on. When you come on to the show, let me know who you are, where you are. We'll do a little housekeeping as well real quick here to make sure everything is set up how I desire for them to be set up. Yep, everything looks good on that end. Let's see how things look on this end. Everything looks good on that end. All right. Everything is looking good. Hello, Debbie. Hello, Errol. How are we doing today? Now, if you haven't saw the videos I produced earlier today, I implore you to go and watch some of those videos that were posted today. Please share and like so that everybody can participate. If you desire to support the channel, there is your method of supporting the channel, but I greatly appreciate your sharing of the channel, sharing of videos, and subscribing to the channel. There was something else I was going to say. It just fell out my head. Air fly out. So we starting out with jokes already. Praise the Lord. Praise the spaghetti god on Saturn. All praises due. Right. Now I know you guys may not be able to see that up there as clearly as I would like. It's kind of thrown together. I couldn't find a picture that really showed what I was looking for. But we're gonna go through some stuff here. Got to get my Angelina hand rolled cigar ready. Seriously, that's what we're doing today. Usually I have a fan on. I forgot to turn it on. It'll be all right. I forgot to turn it on. Forgot to turn the little fan on. Keep that airway clear. All right. Oh, see, Maria is speaking my language here. Mm-hmm. So, how's everybody doing today? I know pretty much everybody's cold. I mean, everybody's cold. So I hope you guys all buttoned up and warmed up. I'm gonna have to burn a fire in the fireplace tonight. But hopefully everybody's doing well, staying warm. So we're gonna get started here in just a minute here. It was supposed to snow here, or some wintry mix. Suppose that started around 5. It didn't start, so hopefully it won't start. But being in this room, got the window open, got my fan on. It's a little chilly, but we're gonna be all right. Usually I don't turn the fan on, but gotta have it on. See, I would move. I would move. I couldn't live there. I would have to move. No, I have to move. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If I had this problem, I'd have to move. Yeah, I can't do that. I can't do it. Even this has been intolerable. I moved to San Antonio for partly because of the weather, and here it is. It's 30 something degrees outside. What's the temperature? It's 32 degrees outside right now. Feels like 23. This is detrimental to my health to live here. So we're going to see exactly how long. Oh, it looks like it's skipping. How long I can stay here in San Antonio. San Antonio may only get a year out of us, or 2 at max, because this is intolerable. I don't do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, San Antonio is in Texas, and there's no way I will move to California. It's not going to happen. I'm going to go with what our first mind was before we left North Carolina. So we're going to do that more than likely here within the next 2 years. But let's get started. Of course, the first part of the show I like to go over. I like to actually stick to the subject matter by which we are going to be talking about. And then after that, we will get into whatever discussions. I try to maintain the show for only 2 hours, but oftentimes you guys trick me and we will go over that with all the questions and the statements and the conversations we have. And I love having those great conversations with you guys. So don't get me wrong. But understand completely, we will be looking at the timeline that the Bible says the world happened and what happened in that region of the world in comparison to what we actually know about history, right? So we're going to look at that. I know that there's a lot of information that we could add into it, that we can talk about. And so we're going to add some of that information in there. I never had a cigar. I think one wouldn't kill me. No, one wouldn't kill you. There's a sweet cigar called, now that might be too strong. Well, a Fat Bottom Betty would be good to start. It's a sweet cigar, has a sweet taste to it, but it is strong, so make sure you eat before you smoke it. Never inhale. Never inhale. No, this is so sweet. That's so sweet. And I have a niece named Connie, so that makes it even better. I haven't seen my niece in a while, but I have a niece named Connie. Her name is Constance. I call her Constantinople. But all right, let's get into the show, people. Let's talk about the subject matter here. So the main line that you see up there is what the Bible purports as its history, as what the history of the universe, history of the world, our creation, the entire thing. No, you do not inhale cigars. Ever. So as we look up here, the Bible starts about right there, 4600 BCE, with the creation of Adam and Eve, the creation of the garden, creation of earth, creation of the universe. The whole kit and caboodle starts around 4600 BCE. And then as we move along, we get to around 2400 BCE, and that is the time frame of the flood. Now, how do we get these numbers? We get these numbers because when you start with Jesus and you go backwards in who begat who and how old whomever was and all their tree, you get to these numbers of 4600 BCE for the creation You get to 2400, around 2400 BCE for Noah's flood. And then we have 2200 is the Tower of Babel. Around 1900 is Abraham. If you saw the video I produced today, it's centered on this era right here. And then we have the Assyrian captivity of northern Israel around in the 800s BCE, followed up by the Babylonian captivity of southern Judah and some of northern Israel in 600 BCE. Follow that up with the Greek occupation around, well, so in between that time frame of the Babylonians and the Greeks, you have the Persians, who came in the latter part of the 500s and then freed them, and then they were a vassal state. And then we get into around 330 is the Greek captivity, the Maccabees around 160, and then the Romans come in at 60, followed by the so-called birth of Jesus around 0, which the Romans were still in control. And then Paul's letters are no earlier than around 70. Some try to put it in the 50s, but it's no earlier really than the 60s at best, but most likely in the 70s. And then you have the Gospel of John between 90 and 120, but the Bible is not fully canonized until around 380 CE. So this is pretty much the timeline. But we're going to look at a few things that show that none of this history could not have possibly happened anytime. The possibility of the history happening starts here at 800 BCE. Between 800, well, really between around, because I should have put the Bronze Age collapse at 1100 BCE. But from around 1100 BCE through this time frame is about the only time frames that anything biblical that's in your Bible, any place, possibility of persons existing, that doesn't mean miracles or anything of that nature happening. This is the only time frame where anything could be possible. Everything from here back is impossible. Now, there was a pastor that once said that if Genesis can be disproven, then the entire Bible falls flat on its face. So, none of this matters if this part is false. This is why most of the time in our deconstructing from a historical and factual standpoint, we stick with from around 1100 BC back. Beyond that, this other stuff, some of these people existed. So, where does that leave us in our conversation? Well, there are quite a few points that I want to hit, and I want to hit them in such a way that it literally makes sense to you guys. It's very easy to understand and easy to follow. So when we start with the idea of the creation happening around 4600 BCE, we have to think that at that time frame, the claim is that no other civilizations exist. No other people exist. Only Adam and Eve exist at this time frame. The problem is that when we go back and we look at the first forms of civilization in China, we find them dating back to around 7000 BCE. When we go further back in the area of the Levant, up in Turkey, we find Göbekli Tepe in around 11,000 BCE. So right off the bat, it demonstrates how the Bible cannot be accurate in its time frame. Because if creation started here in 4600 BCE, how were there people in China in 7,000? People in Göbekli Tepe in 11,000? If I had a board long enough, I can demonstrate how people were in the Americas 25,000 BCE, how people were in Southern Africa around 120,000 BCE. So we could go further, but sticking with an area that's close with Göbekli Tepe, we see that 11,000 BCE, people were in existence in and around the area of Turkey. So that in itself dispels the creation story. Now, after the creation story, you have another problem. You have around 4,500 BCE. We have elements of the Sumerian civilization, not the Sumerian people. The Sumerian people were in existence before Samaria became a kingdom. So the Sumerian people had to, if they were in existence at around 4,500 BCE, as far as a kingdom, a nation, that means that the people in that area had to be around prior to 4,600 BCE. But you have the Sumerians. Now, if you go according to this Bible, the Sumerian people could not have been in existence because Adam and Eve were the only people who were around. They had their children. Their children lived for hundreds of years. Adam himself lived for 900 plus years. But there is nothing within the Bible that would indicate the Sumerians. Why didn't they meet the Sumerian people if they were in Mesopotamia? Because the entire region by which Adam and Eve and Seth and Cain's children, Lamech, Methuselah, all of them would have been living as Sumerians. All of them would have been Sumerians, because all the cities in and around that area, around the time frame that Methuselah and Cain and Abel, well, not Abel, Abel was dead, Cain and Seth and all of their children were around, they were living under the Sumerian rule. It was under the Sumerian kingship during that time frame. And not too soon after the Sumerians, even though the Kemetic people have been around longer than this time frame, the Sphinx have been around for at least 25,000 years. At minimum, well, no, at minimum 13,000 years, but most likely 25,000 years. The Sphinx have been around. The pyramids were around because they were not built for Khufu. So the pyramids and the Sphinx go further back than Göbekli Tepe, Taran Tepe, go back into the time frame when most of the northern hemisphere was going through an ice age. The pyramids were there. The Sahara was not a desert, but a jungle, a fertile land. And the pyramids and the Sphinx were around long before 11,000 BCE. But as far as the Old Kingdom starts around 3100 BCE. But prior to the Old Kingdom, you had the Kush Kingdom. You had the Sudanese people. You had the people in what is modern day Eritrea and Ethiopia. Before it was an Axiom empire, you had people that were around prior to 3100 in the Horn of Africa. So they were there before the Adam and Eve story. And so this Genesis story is starting to fall hella flat on its face. But somewhere in around 30, and my bad, the Egyptians were 4100 BCE when they first started their kingdoms. So, and then somewhere around 3500 BCE, you have the Canaanite people coming to existence. Now, one interesting thing about the Canaanite people coming into existence, you have to understand the Canaanite people were a mixture of Semitic people. Yes, they were the Canaanites, but there was also the other Semitic people, those that would become Israelites or Hebrew. There was also all the Pebusites and the Jebusites and the Ammonites and all the other ites can be categorized as Canaanite people starting around 3500 BCE and existing all the way up until we get to around 15 to 1700 BCE. Would you call people Canaanite was a common term. Now, these Canaanite people had a religion. That religion was based off of the Sumerian religion. They just simply changed the names. Where you had Enlil, you now have Yahweh or El. Where you had the different names of Enki and Ishtar and Inanna and, well, Inanna and Ishtar, same people. But you had these different names, and they just changed the names to fit the Canaanite story. They had Baal and Mot and these other deities that they named, but it was based off the Sumerian story. And the main reason is because the Sumerian Empire, the Sumerian control over the Levant, lasted up until around 1700 BCE, that they were still somewhat in control of all these areas that these Canaanites were living in throughout the Levant. So when we see this story of Noah happening around 2400 BCE, the problem is that the Canaanite people were already in existence, the Kemetic people were in existence, the Sumerians in existence, the Chinese people were in existence, the people in Turkey and Göbekli Tepe in existence. All these other people were in existence. So they all not have flood stories, but their flood stories don't match the same time frame as Noah's, and most of them are localized. Like the Kemetic flood story is just a flood story of the Nile River. The Chinese flood story is just a flood story of the Yellow River, not the entire world. So these stories don't always, they don't match up. They're not the exact same thing. But they were, Noah would have built his ark as a Canaanite, a believer in the following the Canaanite religion that was similar to the, more similar to the Sumerians, had some Kemetic aspects of it, because during some of this time frame, these nations changed up who was in control of the Levant. But then Noah and his sons, upon disembarking from this so-called boat, would have still been within the reign of the Sumerian people. So when the Tower of Babel is built, Babylon at that time was controlled as a city-state, a vassal state of the Sumerians under the Amorites. And so Babylon, which the city that would be was known as Babylon, would later be a part of the Babylonian Empire. But at that time frame, it was the Amorite Empire, and there was the king there, Suma, was in charge at the time frame of this, and they were a lesser known city state. So that would mean Noah's kids were Amorites if they were participating in the building of the Tower of Babel. That would mean that as Amorites, they were under the watchful eye and vassals to the Sumerians if they were building this Tower of Babel. So the thing about it, during this time frame of the Tower of Babel, there were multiple Canaanite languages. There were Kemetic languages. There was the Sumerian, which is not a Semitic language, but the Sumerian language. The Akkadians were around at that time frame, and they had their own Semitic language. The Chinese were around. They had their own language. The Minoans, the Greeks, were in the beginnings of their civilizations, and they had their own language. So it would invalidate this idea that all the world spoke one language, and that language being some Semitic language, a language of God, or whatever you would want to call it. But it invalidates the entire story. But let's just say that they had a leg to stand on, but they don't. Even if you gave them a leg to stand on and say that, well, all the nations then derive themselves from leaving this Tower of Babel, the sad part about it is there is no break in the Sumerian story. There's no break in the Sumerian civilization until we get to around 1700 BCE. There's no break in the Kemetic civilization until we get around 330 BCE when they're conquered by the Greeks. There's no break. There are many other Canaanites that were presumably destroyed by these Israelites during their time frame of the Exodus, but they still existed, and they were not destroyed. The idea of Canaanites didn't end until around 1700 BCE. Actually, not 1700 BCE, until around 1100 BCE is when people stopped focusing on themselves as a full group of Canaanites, but then truly began to separate themselves. Now, the reason they did is because Egypt was, and around this time frame, was in control. From this time frame here, Egypt was in control of the Levant. And so when the Bronze Age collapse happened, they no longer considered themselves the people groups of Canaanites, but around 1100 BCE started separating themselves as Canaanites, Hebrew, Canaanites and Israelites and Jebusites and Prebusites. Is so the idea of the unification of being Canaanites started to go away at that time frame. So there's no way this Tower of Babel story is true. We can see that the Noah story is not true. We see that the Tower of Babel story is not true. And then in around somewhere between 2000 and 1900 BCE, you get Abraham. Abraham supposedly came out of the city of Ur. The city of Ur, during the time frame of Abraham, was controlled by the Sumerians. It was one of the major city-states of the Sumerians before it became an Akkadian city-state. And Abraham would have been a Sumerian. And since, as the story goes, he worshiped this God, he would have known that God to be El, to be Enlil. He would not have known that God to be this God that these people started around the 800s BCE, while they were, let me rephrase, started around here in this 1000 to 800 BCE area where the development of Yahweh came about. Abraham would have known him as El, the Canaanite god, and as well as El, the Sumerian god. Their religions, Canaanites and Sumerian religions, were heavily intermixed during that time frame, and really just was stories based on similar beliefs, but just sectioned off to their own ideologies. So Abraham, who supposedly is chosen by this creator God, really was a Sumerian who also identified as a Canaanite, took the god Enlil, and made him into El, and began this storyline. At least that's what they started saying around 1000, a full 900 years after Abraham supposedly existed. So all the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah and all these things that happened during this time frame from 900 on, them going to Egypt, them going and being slaves in Egypt, all of these things happening in this 400-year time frame, there's no proof of any of it. And this is a time frame where these people from 1000 to 800 developed that story. Centuries after, they started telling the story of an Exodus happening in or around 1300 BCE. Now, in the Kemetic story, which they controlled the Levant from around this time frame, from around the 2000 to 900 time frame, they controlled the Levant all the way to the Bronze Age collapse around 1100, 1000 BCE. There's nothing in their history in this part that says that Israelites came to Egypt, and they were in the Nile Delta area, that they were the shepherds of the king's sheep, that Joseph was the king's number 2 guy, and that this Exodus happened with Moses or anything such. So those things don't fit into the timeline of the Egyptians, and something as massive as the plagues would have been spoken of by the Egyptians. The Sumerians were still around somewhat in that time frame, lesser known, but the Akkadians were around. The Akkadians didn't mention all these things happening in Egypt, and that would have affected the people in the Akkadian people, because they were traders with the Egyptian people. None of the countries, the nations that traded with Egypt mentioned anything about this time frame in the 1300s BCE, when the world economy, their world economy, went to hell in a handbasket. So there's none of that, right? And I like this comment, because they like to say that he was Abraham being from Ur of the Chaldeans. There was no Chaldeans in Ur. It was all Sumerians in Ur at that time frame, right? Hey, Texas Goddess. So we've shown how none of this right here, none of that was possible in the history of this region. That the flood is an impossibility, Tower of Babel impossible, Abraham's existence is moving around, the Exodus, none of those things ever happened. I meant to put the Exodus in here at 1300, around 1300 BCE, but none of those things happened. No Adam, no Eve, no Cain, nor Abel, Seth, no Lamesh, none of these people. I just said his name wrong when I said Lamesh. But you know what I'm talking about. No Methuselah, none of those people. We have detailed records of the rise and fall of the Babylonian Empire, the rise and fall of the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Amorites, all these people. We have data about the Kemetic, overwhelming amount of data about the Egyptian Empire and the Kushite people, and all of them, all their information invalidates all of this. All of this. And as I said in the very beginning, if this is false, then everything that is believed here falls flat on its face. All the miracles, all the conquering, walls falling down in Jericho, false. None of those things matter. Hezekiah claiming all of this happening and editing it and having it put down on tablets and on some scrolls that we've never found, but Hezekiah talking about all these things never happened. The main reason we validate Hezekiah being around the 800 BCE is because we have information from the Assyrians that show that they conquered everything in northern Israel except for Jerusalem. And the only reason they stopped their siege in Jerusalem in the 800s is because Hezekiah paid the price. He paid the vassal state price. He went ahead and paid them off. And the warriors, the soldiers, the army of Sennacherib was returned back. The only reason we know these things about Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is because we got detailed records of the Babylonians capturing and conquering Judea and northern Israel. And so we can validate that the Bible has accurate information as far as the capturing of their lands, but it doesn't validate somebody standing in a fire. It doesn't validate Daniel interpreting some dreams. None of those things happened. At no point did the sun stop moving. You think if the sun stopped moving somewhere around in here, we would have, because Jericho would have been somewhere around in Jericho, AI, all that stuff would have been right around in here. If that would have happened in around in the 1200s BCE, there would be so many people who wrote about it. There would be an overwhelming amount of data from cultures around the world that would have written about it. You see, the reason why we know that prior to somewhere around 1100 BCE, 900 BCE, 12,000 BCE, 9,000 BCE, we know that there was a Younger Dryas flood, is because we do have people all over coastal areas who wrote about an ancient flood that happened in their culture. And you have to recognize all those flood stories were not written back then. They were written way up here somewhere. They're written up here, up in here. But only coastal people knew about some massive flood, and they all thought the whole world flooded. The people in the Indus Valley who were near the coast wrote their own story about how Manu saved this one dude, these people in a boat. So it doesn't fit the Noah story. Because everybody else, and Christians like to say that, well, if everybody wrote about a flood story, then the Noah story has to be true. If everybody wrote about a flood story, then the Manu story has to be true. If everybody wrote about a flood story, then the Epic of Gilgamesh has to be true. You can easily pawn that off into one of the other stories. It doesn't mean the Noah story is true. As a matter of fact, the Noah story is one of the less likely stories to be true. So it doesn't fit. And as Johnny, what do you say? Johnny Cochran said, if it doesn't fit, you must have quit. And actually, it's a cool story. If you read the story of Vishnu, the first avatar, it's a very cool story. And it's older than the Noah story. You gotta understand, this Noah story wasn't even told until between here and here. Any oral tradition of that story was in this time frame. So no, Abraham didn't write about it. None of these people here wrote about these stories. When Abraham was in Egypt, he didn't write about these stories. He didn't talk about them. You know, when Lot was walking around in Sodom and Gomorrah, he didn't talk about these stories. He didn't warn the people about what had happened with his great granddaddy, uncle. You know, these stories weren't being told, you know, by them. When Joseph went to Egypt, he wasn't talking about these stories. He didn't bring up the Tower of Babel. He didn't talk about Noah. He didn't write these things down. He wasn't talking about Adam and Eve or the beginning of all creation as a right-hand man to the Pharaoh. He wasn't talking about those things. We don't get those things until after the Bronze Age collapse, until we get around in here, when the Israelite people decided they didn't want to be Canaanites no more. And when they decided they didn't want to be Canaanites no more and they wanted to be Israelites, that's when they start demonizing the Canaanite people and start demonizing the Kemetic and the Sumerian people, right? That's when they start demonizing all those people, even though they pretty much stole the Canaanite. They stole these three people's religions and bounded them into one of these stories. All these stories here are based on what they learned as Canaanites, what they learned from being under the control of the Egyptians, and what they learned being under the control of the Sumerians. And so they wrote their own story during the Bronze Age collapse. Because Egypt, who was in control of that area, was defeated by the Phoenician people, the sea people, and that freed the Levant, and the hillside people who were Canaanites started calling themselves, they had been calling themselves Israelites. The last thing and the first thing we heard from them was from the Egyptian Pharaoh Meneptah in his stele around 1204, who said that he had destroyed a people called the Israelites. This is why we know they were a nomadic people still around 1204, around 1200, right before the Bronze Age collapse, and that they were trying to separate themselves from the Canaanites, because every other person that Meneptah said that he conquered, he identified them as a nation, whereas the Israelite people were identified as just a group of people, a wandering group of people. So they didn't really start to establish any type of nationhood until somewhere around 900 BCE, and then on into the 800s. But then the Assyrians came and whooped their ass. And even after the Assyrians conquered them, they still maintained many of the old ways of the Canaanite, Egyptians, and Sumerians. But they were more Canaanite type old ways that they kept. It's not until you get at the end of the Babylonian captivity that you see major overhauls of their teachings. Now, Hezekiah and Jehoiakim, they did try to change some things in the 800s, but the main changes happened in around 500 and 400 BCE is when you see the main changes to their religions. But prior to that, they were doing most of the Canaanite stuff. Israel means striving with El and Lil. When did Yahweh come into the picture? So Yahweh began to come into the picture in and around the 900 BCE time frame is when you start getting the switch from El to Yahweh. This is when during this time frame, this is when instead of El being married to Asherah and El having the children of Baal and Yahweh, in and around this time frame with Hezekiah, does now El and Yahweh become one, and instead is Yahweh is married to Asherah, and they have the children Baal and Mot. And then it is not until we get to the splitting, where the kingdoms have been split, but it's not until we get around the Babylonian captivity in the 600s, 500s BCE, that then they do away with Asherah and with Yahweh having children of Baal and Mot, and now he is the eternal God. See, eternal godhood didn't happen to Yahweh until around this time frame right there, until around 500 BCE. So that's when we get that aspect of it. Now, like I said, all this other stuff from the moment of the Assyrian captivity, if you want to say certain people existed, they probably did exist. Certain people. Hezekiah most likely existed because Sennacherib mentions him as well as the king of Jerusalem who paid him off, right? But as far as Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, all those people, there's no proof of their existence, only proof of a Babylonian captivity. The different kings list of the whoever was king of the Israelites, those people probably most likely existed. Even under the Greeks, we know the Maccabees existed. And then under Roman rule, we know some of those people existed. But as far as anybody else, Paul probably one of the few people out of the New Testament that most likely existed was Paul. Jesus existing as the biblical version of Jesus didn't exist. Multiple people named Yeshua during first century claiming to be the Messiah probably existed. Paul is identified as existing. John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, there's no proof that any of them existed. You really don't have a fullness of people believing in those deities until you get the canonization of the Bible in 380. Now, Irenaeus in 182 is the first one to name those Gospels, Mark, Luke, John, and Matthew. But before that, Justin Martyr, just 30 years prior, just called them the wisdom of the apostles. He didn't have a name for them because nobody knew the name for them. But for damn sure, none of these people, none of the people named before the Assyrian captivity existed. You said, I thought Yahweh came from the Midians, which was in Arabia. So in the northern Arabian area, you had a group of Midians and Moabite people who worship a god Yahweh. They fit as part of the Canaanite people. Yahweh was a Canaanite god in the beginning. Yahweh was the Canaanite storm deity. So he was in the Canaanite pantheon, but he was the son of El and Asherah. So Yahweh was in existence, was known by all the Canaanite tribes. So you could have been an Amorite, a Moabite, a Midianite, all the other ites, and you would have known who Yahweh was. But just like in the Sumerian pantheon, just like in the Babylonian, which is a copy of the Sumerians, they had a multitude of gods, but in your city, in your land, you may put one preference over one god than the other. It's kind of like, okay, so in modern day time frame, if you have any friends in the or know people in this religion, you will find that yes, they all have Brahma and Vishnu and other major deities, but they then will have smaller deities that they worship more so in their city and more so even in their homes. Just like in Ifa, you may know Oshun, Ogun, Shango, but Eshu or Mamawata may be your primary Orisha. So when you think about Yahweh during the time frame with the Canaan, when he was a Canaanite deity, it's just like that. Yahweh may have been your tribe's primary God, but you knew that Yahweh daddy was El. So what, and if you even looking at the Bible in the when the after the Babylonian captivity, I forgot exactly where it is, but when the Reconstructionist guy at that time frame, and I can't think of his name, he wrote that no longer will we worship Baal, but we will only worship Yahweh. That was during his editing after the during and after the Babylonian captivity, to say that no, we are going to worship the storm deity, because obviously worshiping any other form, worshiping El at that time frame is not doing us any good. We keep being captured. First it was the Assyrians, and we went straight from the Assyrians to the damn Babylonians, and we went straight from the Babylonians to the damn Persians. Yeah, they let us go and be a vassal state, but damn. And not too long later, here comes the Greeks. Oh, good old Maria is on point tonight. In the Hindu, there are different sects of people worshiping different gods as beings, as being Brahma, aka the supreme deity. We Shaktas, for instance, worship Adi Shakti. I hope I said that right, as supreme. And you'll find this in a lot of the older religions and in a lot of the older religions. Before monotheism became a thing, that was the mindset. And people were very hard coded to do that. Look at what happened to Akhenaten. He tried to take away the Egyptians' polytheistic viewpoints and just worship the Aten. And together with the military and the priesthood, they got rid of his ass. You know, that hurt them economically, and that hurt them emotionally. And he made enemies. And so 17 years is all that he ruled. And that happened in the 1400s BCE in Egypt when Akhenaten was in control. Now, if you think about it, according to the biblical story, while Akhenaten was in control, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt over the king's herd up there in Goshen. But Akhenaten doesn't mention them. Thutmose, the first, second, or third, none of them mention these Israelite people. They don't mention they got all these slaves. When Nefertiti takes over, she doesn't mention them. When Tutankhamun takes over, he doesn't mention them. Nobody in Egypt ever mentioned these people. And it's not to, and it's not, some people try to say, well, they didn't mention them because they were embarrassed because of what this guy did to them. Okay, but if they didn't mention them when they was embarrassed, why didn't they mention them when they were oppressing them? Why didn't they mention them when they were utilizing them as slaves? Where's the mentioning of them? There's zero. Oh, yes. You will find this to be very common in Mexico, Central America, and South America, where They are a mixture of Catholicism and their indigenous religion, and they've replaced some of their indigenous deities with the Catholic saints. And so, in truth, they worship those Catholic saints. Mm-hmm. Egypt mentions when they were conquered by the Hyksos. They mention when they lost sea battles. They mention when their battles against the Cush, when they lost to them, when they were ruling Egypt. They mention a bunch of stuff. So that argument of them not mentioning them because of the embarrassment never works out. Now, so does anybody have any questions about anything on this timeline? Anything that happened on this timeline? Also, let me also give my invitation for anybody who wanted to come on to the live. You're always welcome. You got to have something constructive to say. If you're just somebody who just wants to just blah, 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 and then no. Or just, Jesus is God, and why are you talking about us? This is so cruel. No. And you're talking about the Meneptah Stele. That's the first time Israel is mentioned. And like I said, they're only mentioned as a people, not as a nation. Who did the Sumerians get their religion from? We don't know. Honestly, we just have no idea where the Sumerians get their religion from. We don't even know where the Sumerians came from. It's like 4500 BCE, there was this Sumerian kingdom. But the Sumerians never wrote, or at least we haven't found anything where the Sumerians say where they came from. I'm more inclined to think that the Sumerians, you had different nations of people ruling or tribal rulings throughout this time frame. Maybe they came from the people of Göbekli Tepe. Maybe they were, just warring small states that didn't see the value in writing down history. But we have absolutely no idea where they came from. Not exactly sure what you mean. So the Bible is used to persuade the masses, but we have debunked it. Yeah, the Bible is used to persuade the masses. And yes, we do debunk it here. All right. Hold on, Maria. Let me put the invite out there. One day Maria gonna show us a face. Invite downrange. Lock and load. Say, I still haven't figured out if God is a man in the bigger sky. It's not. The Kemetic civilization and other Nile Valley civilizations weren't polytheistic, they were monotheistic. Their gods were aspects of expressions of creation residing in nature. That is a true statement. That is a true statement. They truly weren't polytheistic. They really just view every deity as a part of nature. The God is nature. Like if you had to put it if I had to put it down as life-saving, the God would be nature. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to bring Maria onto the stage.
Hey, thank you for inviting me on again, Coach. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that I've been looking up, because I know that a lot of people will say, because there are certain I guess, academic qualifiers for civilizations, that Sumer is the first civilizations, but there were other peoples that could be called civilized or civilizations even before that. And one of the oldest civilizations, speaking of the Indus, is actually the Harappan people. We discovered a lot of their remains or their culture around in the Mohenjo-Daro region, and it's somewhere.
Treat us like we're in the third grade.
Huh?
You got to treat us like we're in the third grade. Where's the medallion?
I'm not exactly sure. I know it's somewhere in India, and this is where it's. Yes, India. I said the Indus because it's like in India.
You
yes,
did say that. My bad.
In India. And we know the Harappans actually predate Sumer. And in fact, interesting enough, the Sumerians and the Harappans even traded with one another. And it is now actually believed that the Harappans themselves stemmed from a precursor civilization, though we haven't exactly found what that precursor civilization actually is. So given all that put together, and this is something I mentioned when I deal with Christians, I mean, the Harappan civilization alone is far, far older than the events of the Bible, than Adam and Eve or any of these things, because they're older than even the Sumerians. And we're not even talking about things like Göbekli Tepe or Çatalhöyük, these various civilizations and things like that, which all show the earth is far older than what Christianity would lead us to believe. And one thing that I frequently mention to Christians, because they think, not even just Christians, but Muslims, religious Jews, believe their religion is the first faith. And that isn't even accurate. They're some of the most recent religions in human history, and they derive from various pagan religions. But if we actually look at the oldest human civilizations, their divine statuary, and they had divine statuary, which shows they were not Abrahamics, because they did, a lot of Abrahamics don't even permit statuary of the gods. Right. But their divine statuary in the earliest times was exclusively feminine, with male gods only coming in a later period. So given that the Abrahamic religions are essentially the He-Man woman haters club, that don't really work out well for them.
No, it doesn't. And even if we can go with, the problem with utilizing the term civilization is that I tend to, when I'm doing this kind of thing, I err on the side of what archaeology and historians, and I know it's a Western mindset of civilizations being people not migrating, but establishing a colony, a group of people together in a city or town with laws, government, and things of that nature. But when we look at civilization in its purest form, as you were explaining, that it is simply when people just gather together. They don't have to have a king or ruler. They might have a chief. They might have some elders and things of that nature. They may even be traveling together. But even if they're traveling together, they are a civilization. They have an identity. Well, and when we look at that, we can go all the way back to things like Adam's calendar in Southern Africa, which goes back, I believe, like 120,000 years ago?
Well, do we even consider advanced structures? Like the Harappans had like advanced structures, buildings, they had running water, they had heated floors, so they had a lot of accoutrements of what we would consider definitely back then advanced civilization.
And that would be here's the problem with a lot of archaeology. They only want to stick with a kind of biblical sense of mentality when it comes to it. Even if they've stepped away from it, even if they don't accept it, they still want to keep things somewhat confined in that. And so they would rather take another group and make them less civilized in their mindset so that you don't count them as a civilization. And they would say, well, we have evidence of human settlements. So anytime you hear them say human settlements, they're just trying to avoid utilizing the term civilization.
Mm-hmm.
because they want to keep Sumeria, Egypt as your, and as their primary, instead of
Right.
recognizing that there were people in China known for different names before the Chinese who were civilizations. So they'll say that they were settlements in early China. The Tamarians, you know, and people of that nature, they were settlements. But these people are the ones who probably actually built that damn wall, got that wall started,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they were way back, but they don't want to give them credit.
Right. And, it's even one thing that you even mentioned back to Africa. I mean, it's been known for a long time that not even just the human race, sprouted up out of Africa. And there are very old civilizations, in Africa, whether you, this, I know we were talking about the squibble over what is civilization versus what is not, but they did have advanced structures and things like that even before, well, quite frankly, Sumer.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The Sumerian people had to come from somewhere. They
Right.
had to start out. You had to start out with at least about 5 or 6 people that said, "Hey, it's safety in numbers. Why don't we all
Mm-hmm.
just live together? We agree with each other. I'm a daddy, you a mama, you a daddy. We got kids. Let's get our kids together and we just have our own little group." And then that
Right.
group gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that takes time. That happens over time. So they had to be people in settlements with civilization prior to that. So yeah, the whole thing. That's why I decided to do this one today, because I was like, a true timeline of accepting human existence and human settlements goes so far beyond this Bible
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't even make sense how anyone could remain attached to this book.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, it's like I've said before, when it comes to believing Christians, in my experience, there are either two types of people. They're either one, ignorant of the what the Bible actually says and the fact the evidence shows it not to be true, or quite frankly, like I've said before, they are malignant narcissists, and we vibe with our tribe. So the reason why they choose such a malignant narcissist to worship is because that's what it reflects within themselves.
Yeah. And it's hard for people to break away from what you've been taught as a child, or even if you weren't taught it as a child, you're surrounded by it growing up in whatever country you grow up in. And so when you start to look at life and you emotionalize your experiences and you want to then take that emotion and make it spiritual, you have a tendency to gravitate towards the thing that you've heard all the time or that you were surrounded by. And then when you see that the information is false, it's like breaking up with your first love. It's hard and they don't want to do it.
What's interesting? I think my experience might be somewhat a little different. Now, growing up as a Christian, I did believe in this God, but I don't think you could ever say that I had, like, an affectionate relationship, like had this nice view of this God as my heavenly father. I believed he existed and I thought he was good until I found out that he wasn't. And even then I had to say he was good, otherwise he'd do awful things to me. Um, but I never really saw him in like that. Quite frankly, even the images of Jesus and God the Father kind of scared me in the way they looked, because this is going to sound stupid, but I always thought they looked like creepy wizards. You know?
No, I mean, depending upon when you grew up, I can see that thought process.
Yeah, I grew up in the 90s in the South, so yeah. And uh and when I was so abused by this religion, I lived for years of my life terrified that I was going to hell for who I was. So when I was actually able to leave, I didn't feel this kind of like a breakup, like I'm losing something. I felt relief leaving. Like I felt like I was escaping a great danger.
Right. So yours was a breakup, like breaking up with an abuser.
Right,
You were
yes.
trapped in an abusive relationship, and then you finally broke free from that abuser. But
Right.
it's still emotional.
It is. I mean, it's more so, but the issue was not so much because it was great leaving the religion. But the issue was living around so many people who believe in it, and all and how awful they act and all the awful evil things they do. Because, like, I do actually believe that Yahweh exists, because many pagans do. In fact, Hinduism even has our own names for him. We just consider him a malevolent asura or demon. Um, but I believe that he exists, but I'm not afraid of him, because I know a thing about, if you know anything about demons, they can affect you somewhat, but they can only really affect you if you let them in.
Well, I've always erred on the side of something my grandmother told me when I was younger, because she, growing up in Carrollton, Georgia, she believed in, roots.
Roots, yeah,
So,
roots. And a root. Like the root doctors, the root ladies, yeah.
yeah, so she was like, it can only harm you if you believe it will harm you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe that it won't harm you, it won't harm you. So when people try to put a root on you, it only works if you accept the root.
Right,
And
yes.
and she said that to me. I think I was probably about 8 or 9 years old when she said that. And that stuck with me my whole life. Like, okay, so another person's mental anguish or issues or intentions can't hurt me unless I allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And now, personally, I don't believe in outward demons other than the demon of somebody else, like another person. Now, there's some otherworldly things out there that could be possibly. I don't know, but I do know that can't nothing hurt me unless I allow it.
Right. Obviously, I do believe in outward demons, and I think that, unlike with the gods, who have kind of governance of being, demons can only really come. I mean, they can affect you somewhat, but they can only really affect you if you let them in. But I'm not really afraid of Yahweh. The people that terrify me, and who I hate even more than him, are his believing followers, because those are the ones who do the damage. Those are the ones who set up the inquisitions. Those are the ones who do all these things against disbelievers, against gay people, against women. Those are the ones you have to be like the believers themselves. He's just off somewhere being evil, but his followers are the ones. It's almost like, you're probably aware of like narcissist family dynamics, like
Yeah.
if you actually see it. And if anything, I don't know if you know what the concept of like the flying monkeys are with regard to the narcissist family dynamics. Yeah, it comes from the Wizard of Oz, we know. It's basically someone who's like friends with the narcissist, or someone who's in the family who carries out abuse for the narcissist, against whoever's the scapegoat. And that's how I see it.
I've never heard that before, but I've heard it
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, that's what they are. They carry out abuse by proxy. So
I
essentially,
understand the concept.
they're like the minions of the narcissist, and that's how I see Abraham, like the believing Abrahamics. They're flying monkeys. They're carrying out abuse by proxy in the name of this god.
Okay. I'm with you. That's good. I'm not laughing because it's funny, but I'm not laughing because it's bad or wrong. I'm laughing because I've never thought about that, and that's good. That's some good stuff right there. It's like when you sit in church, like, oh, preach on, preacher, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I understand. Well, no, I think it's, it's always good to laugh and have fun, and if I can make someone laugh, I'm very happy to do that. But that's one thing because like I've known narcissists. Like, honestly, I'd say that my grandmother and, well, my mama had narcissistic traits, terrible narcissistic traits. And I know my father is a full-blown narcissist. The way he acts is just ridiculous. So I wanted to understand where this come from and how these family dynamics play out, and also how to avoid people who come up with that malignant traits, because you're never going to change them. The only way to get away from those people, the only way you can do is to get the hell away from those people.
Yeah, I understand. And like, because what that reminds me of is the deacons and the mothers of the church,
Oh,
the other
yes.
elders of the church, who know they have the pastor who is sexing up the other women, who's taking the money, who's making it all about himself, making sure he's living, high on the hog, while his parishioners are barely able to pay rent and eat food. And they just continue to stand around and perpetuate that idea and support it and justify it and tell the people that you don't question the pastor and he's a man of God, and God wants them to be blessed and all these sorts of things. Or the pastor is human too, so you can't go out there and, yeah, I know he did wrong by you, but you shouldn't destroy the pastor because look at all the other good he's doing. That kind of bullshit.
Oh yes, they even like blame like the people that have been raped, especially if they're women and children, for tempting this man of God. But what they are essentially the people in the congregation they're the cleanup woman. They enable the pastor, they cover up for his evil wrongdoings and help him to get away with it. I even read a story of there was this pastor who was like a convicted sex offender against children, and instead of getting rid of the pastor, the congregation, the church congregation, just banned children from attending because he couldn't be around kids.
Wow. That's just crazy. That's crazy. No, he should be up under the jail being tortured.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I never heard that. Well, as always, I appreciate you, Maria.
Thank you.
As I'm gonna start saying as usual, because you know you're creating an expectation now, right?
Well, I'm glad that it just makes me happy that you enjoy what I have to say.
Yeah, I'm telling you, because people are already logging on and following you, so you create an expectation. And like I said last week, have you posted a video yet?
Not yet, but I'm gonna look into it. Like I said before, I'm gonna look into it.
Don't make me cuss you out. We had such a good little conversation. I hate to have to cuss you out. God damn.
I know. I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna look into it.
Ain't nobody got time for you looking. Get the doing.
Oh Lord, you gonna make me cough.
I'm just saying. Wait a minute. Let me hit you in your back pocket a little bit. I'm just saying. If Collie's husband did not come down and lay down and take action, Collie would have kept destroying the world, right?
Yeah, in many versions, yeah.
So if you don't take action, then you're going to allow the world to be destroyed and allow Collie to go and destroy all the world. So it is up to you to save the world.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if I have the power, because I have
been. You know what I'm talking about? What the point I'm trying to make?
I know.
I'm trying to use your own stuff against you right now.
Well, it's actually interesting because, how do I put this? I've actually been debating people a long time, especially even debating Abrahamics, and they're on the most part, no lie, like I said before, most of them I definitely think are narcissists because you will never get into it. And this is something I know you mentioned before, how you felt like demonic energy from people themselves. Honestly, I believe that some people are incarnate devils. I do.
By the way some people act, I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, I got another point to hit you in the back pocket to get you started.
Okay.
You ready?
Okay.
One of the things I have always had a struggle to understand is how people in the LGBTQ community can still be Christian.
And oh my God, I've said the same thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've said the same thing.
And I just put out a video yesterday where this gentleman was saying how Jesus saved him and he's not gay anymore, and all
he's gonna be back on the pole real quick.
Right? And by his mannerisms, you would say otherwise.
We know.
But there are so many people in the LGBT community who are looking for an advocacy, looking for a way out, looking for a community out. And you could very well present that community, that voice that they need to find their way out. They are fearful of leaving because of their family or friends or just the indoctrination of it all. But you could be that way out.
Can I say something?
But if you're silent, hell no. But if you're silent, then they will never hear that voice and they will continue to suffer and struggle because of you.
Well, let me say this real quick, and because this is,
Uh-huh.
I've dealt with those people before. I've dealt with gay Abrahamics in there. I've tried to educate them and show them all the facts. But you know what the worst part about it? Honestly, many of them don't even listen and still want to be a part of this religion because they are literally masochists. They love pain and misery. Like the people who are going to leave, who have like you can't make anybody love themselves.
No, you can't. But if they don't know that there's water,
True.
then they don't even know if they could drink.
True.
It's not about they should drink, but could they drink? You just have to present it so that they have the choice. And so you can't worry about the ones who don't decide. Like there are Christians who come on my page all the time. They make all kind of comments. Some joker came on here talking about my cigars a few minutes ago. I don't really give two rat's asses about his thought process because I'm not here for him.
They mad because they can't.
Everybody
they mad because they can't afford expensive cigars.
You're damn right. So I'm saying you should do it because you, and Tim Brown, just in case you didn't see the last week, Maria said that he's part of the LGBT community. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I wouldn't throw that out there.
No, I know.
I was answering somebody who he was asking. Tim's a good guy. Don't get me wrong. He's a good guy from what I know here.
No, I'm just like your regular, like, gay person. That's what I am. I'm just that's what I am.
So you got me with that one. But my point is, I love encouraging people to get started on things that they are passionate about, and you study enough that you have a passion for it, and there's an audience out there, and it's a rather large audience, whether you realize it or not, and not all of that audience is part of that community. It's just an audience, period. So get started.
I will say this. I honestly think, because I've known some people who especially like deal with controversial things, and you see the nice part of me, but when I really deal with people who are coming for me, like Abrahamics, like I can be vicious. Like, I'm not lying that I can talk shit with the best of them. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it is I could easily see getting on there and I just like go nuclear on these people and channel demonetized, stay suspended because they call these people, because they cuss these people down to the white meat.
No, I do it all the time. My channel, it got demonetized one time in 8 years, so get over it. Get over it.
Okay.
So you done with the bullshit?
I might be a little bit on the bullshit, but I'm still waiting. I'm gonna go look into it if I can, if I can get the time. Otherwise, I can talk. Huh?
You see this, right?
I see it. I see.
Oh, boy, y'all be killing me.
Well, I said I'm gonna look into it. That's more than I've ever done before. But also, anytime you'll have me on, I enjoy talking with you. You're a very intelligent person. I've recommended you to a lot of my friends that I know, especially one of my besties. So I'm really grateful for the work that you've done, because even I myself, who gone into detail studying this stuff, I've learned stuff from you that was even news to me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. And you'll learn a lot more when you start doing videos, because you wind up studying more and you see more information that leads you down more rabbit holes, and you'll learn so much.
Oh, it's always been a passion. Like even when I was like young and I got like this book of Greek mythology, like I was like studying world religion even from like when I was a little bitty creature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Maria, I want you to put your channel name in the comments when you get off here, okay?
You mean my I don't really have much on there. Like I don't have like any videos. I have like my channel, but like it's okay, I will.
Anybody ask you, we know you ain't made shit yet. Just put it on there.
So okay, sure, I will. I will.
And it's a YouTube channel, right? Or is YouTube or Facebook?
Yeah, of course. I know YouTube has got only thing, I mean, I have a Facebook account, but my YouTube channel is the one that we're talking with with right now. I mean, I forget exactly how I started it because I had to actually start multiple channels because they deleted one of them because I didn't update it in time. But yeah, I'll send it. I'll send. This is my URL for my hold on. I'm trying to, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna send my this is my URL to my channel for anyone who wants to subscribe to me or just want to say hi or anything.
Yeah. And see, let me show you how you can be an asshole and it don't matter.
Okay, I'll post it.
See, this is how you can be an asshole and it don't matter. Because people, usually I would have ignored this comment. Black man supporting the destruction of his own people. Laugh out loud. I see why you smoke them thick ass cigars. You can't even live with yourself. You see, this person has no idea who I am, doesn't know anything about me, right?
When have you ever supported the destruction of your own people?
But if you're a Christian person, you are supporting a religion that enslaved your ancestors because you look like you might be a black guy, but you support a religion that enslaved your own people, that indoctrinated the mindset of your own people at the edge of a whip, of a gun, and forced your people to let go of their ancestral religions, a religion that allowed them to rape your grandmothers and buck break your grandfathers, one that separated your families, and one that allowed for them to encroach upon your pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Yet you still continuously sit up here and say that Maria is the destruction of our community. But what have you done to help the black community? Where is your mark on the black community, Jay? You have no mark on the black community. You don't. More than likely, you could, but you probably don't. You're probably one of those bum ass dudes who go around here impregnating women and leaving them and then want to justify yourself as a true black man when you're probably just a freaking bum. And then you so focused on my cigars because this is the second comment you've made. Maybe you just feel like you want some long brown thing in your mouth. Jay.
It's projection.
Like you're projecting that you want something long and brown. And you hearing Maria thinking, I wonder what long and brown Maria got, that you're thinking about it. Because why would you consistently talk about my cigars unless you like that long and brown? Because if you knew anything about me, you know that I own a cigar lounge. So this is a part of who I am. And I know exactly who I am. So go and get you something long and brown, Jay. Just be yourself. That's what I'm actually promoting with Maria, is the fact of you can be yourself. You don't have to let some book, some God, some civilization, some culture define who you are. You are who you are if you decide to be who you are. So go and get you some long and brown, Jay, because you want something long and brown, either in your mouth or in your backside. So Jay, just go on and put it in your mouth.
See, also, does the Christian idiot think that I'm black because I'm not black?
Yeah, he does. Wait, you ain't black?
No, I'm white.
For real?
Yeah.
Shit, I thought you was black too.
Well, again, I don't know how I've promoted anything about the destruction of the black community, because I'm actually very much pro black people, that's advancing funny. and rising in society and owning businesses and elevating themselves. So I've never said anything. And also, again, he promotes a religion that is pretty much enslaved and destroyed Africa. Like Christianity and Islam is two of the worst things to ever happen to Africa. They have raped Africa of people, resources, everything. They are two of the biggest groups, the Christians, the Euro Christians, and the Arab Muslims, that have colonized Africa.
Wait a minute. I'm feeling some kind of way though. You are right about everything you just said. And I don't mean to skip over that. You're absolutely right. Those two religions have been more destructive to Africa than anything else. But everybody else on here is saying, well, a lot of people on here are saying that they knew that you were white. Am I the only one who didn't know? I'll be damned.
I mean, again, I don't wear I don't like announce my race to everybody, but like, yeah, I'm just I'm just a regular white person, nothing special.
How did I miss it and everybody else got it? That's what's pissing me off right now.
I don't know. I mean, he thought I
Okay,
was black too, but
let me tell you. Let me tell you. And maybe this is because I grew up in Atlanta, but your vocal inflections are very similar to black gay men in Atlanta.
well, I am from the South, so I've got I've always had a twang to my voice, so I definitely have that twang going on, and even if we're talking about like a lot of what people call, I guess, the black scent with many black Americans has a lot of its roots in southern forms of speech, because let's be real, they were the people bringing over here for
Yeah,
the black people to speak English, specifically southern styled English.
I'm just mad because usually I'm very perceptive of people, and I just screwed that one all the way. So that's all. That's all. It's just a personal thing on this one. It's just like usually I recognize aspects of people just even just by listening to them. I'm better at reading body language and facial language, but usually I can hear things in voices. I used to be able to, like, I can hear somebody talk and know what country they come from.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, I just screwed that one up. Okay.
Well, and also, I mean, if this means anything, unlike this particular person who worships the Middle Eastern Jesus, I actually do worship African deities, unlike him. So while he's worshiping the god of the people who enslaved his ancestors, I am actually worshiping some deities from Ifa.
Well, damn. And this dude is totally devoid of any understanding or respect for his ancestral religions.
No, he probably looks down on Africa. Like, he probably wants to be like one of those Hebrew Israelites that thinks they're Jews and thinks that all Africans were uncivilized tribesmen, because that's where a lot of this whole Hebrew
Yeah.
Israelite bullshit comes from. It's internalized white supremacy. Like wanting to be Moors, wanting to be Native Americans, it's absolutely internalized white supremacy that they don't want to identify with Africa or any part of Africa.
No, you're absolutely right, and I agree. But and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and he said something else that piqued my interest because this is also a common Christian argument. Name another book that has been around and you mean relevant? Because yes, the Bible is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most irrelevant books that should be in existence. But he's saying the reason why I get so much hate, he's trying to say that the Bible is relevant. And the reason why I get so much hate is because you feel conviction in the truth of the truth in that soul of yours. I know you regret you who you are and all this bullshit. No, sir. So a lot of Christians like to think that the Bible has been around for so much longer than anything else. But you, as a practicing in this religion, know that the Indus writings have been around much longer than the Bible, and that the Indus religion has been around longer than any Christian or Jewish religion has been around. So therefore, it has just as much relevance as the Bible. And as a matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that by number, it has more relevance because with the number of just the sheer number of people in that religion living in India and whose culture has been, whether they are Muslim or Hindu, their culture has been based on those books, on those writings of the Vedics and the
Mm-hmm.
Upanishads, that it has had more relevance. See, this is an American isolation, we are the greatest mentality.
They don't know
That
nothing about nobody
nobody,
else.
right, don't know shit about nobody else and doesn't realize how much of an impact that the Indus religion has had on the world. The only difference, the biggest relevance that the Bible has had on the world is in its ability to be cruel and conquer other people.
Mm-hmm.
Without the
It's,
conquering, that religion would have died. It didn't
it,
flourish because of love, it
right.
flourished because of death and slavery.
It's theistic fascism. And let me say you something, Jay Jaquia. My religion and my scriptures were ancient long before even the earliest book of the Bible was written.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all some Johnny come latelys, okay? Y'all the new girl in town. So you need to sit your asses down and stay in a child's place. My religion is the grandma of old, like the old grandma of religions.
See, you can cuss people out and it ain't even gonna hurt the channel.
Okay.
Yeah, I pulled some shit that you said 15 minutes ago and throw it right back in.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that's a popular Christian argument that they try to use, and it's so weak. It's such a weak thing. And here's the thing: give it 20 more years, and Islam will be a larger religion than Christianity. So then will he change his stance? Because then the Quran will be said to be the most impactful book because more people worship the Quran, worship based on the Quran, than there will be people who worship based on the Bible.
Well, I will say this should be documented, though, that, again, like what you said is absolutely true, and people are leaving Christianity en masse in the West. But I would say Islam is getting growth, not because people are converting to it. In fact, even with converts, they typically stay in it for like 2 or 3 years and then leave because Islam is crazy. But the reason why we are actually seeing a growth of in Islam and Muslims is because they breed like rabbits. And one of the things that helps that is because many of them practice polygamy, like or polygyny, like marrying multiple women. And in fact, in a lot of Western and non-Muslim countries, they're still doing this. They're just doing it on the slick. Like they'll marry one woman and that'll be their legal wife, but then they'll go to the mosque and then they'll marry these other women Islamically, you know, or not really. And then the women will go to the government and apply for like a status as like single mothers for welfare to get that money because they know they ain't shit. Muslim husband ain't paying for nothing.
That is very, very true. And you're absolutely right. The only reason that Islam would be larger than Christianity is because of birth rate. That's one of many people don't realize why that's one of 2 reasons why the ultra right wanted to put Roe versus Wade back in there is to maintain white supremacy and dominance in America by numbers. And then also because Christianity is losing so many converts that they believe they need to have more Christian babies. But the people who are walking away from Christianity and all other religions has grown to be like the 4th largest group of people. It's like than some of these other religions. There are more people who don't believe in these religions than there are like Buddhists.
Right. Well, and also, you know where the conservative Christians fucked up on? Because part of it is due to white supremacists. I've seen some of them play it one increase the white birth rate. Problem is, by completely banning abortion, many non-whites are already having more kids than whites in general. So that's just going to increase the non-white birth rate even more for those who really are racist against non-white people. But also another thing, and this is what Christians don't realize, the more puritanical and Christian you raise a child, the more likely they're going to leave it when they grow up. I mean, YouTube, the space are full of examples of ex-Christians who were born in high control environments and they left because it's awful, you know? The only way they can keep people Christian is if they actually enact a theocracy and make it illegal to leave Christianity, like they've done when they've had power in history, and like how many Muslim nations do for when people leave Islam.
That's what the evangelical right is trying to do. They want theocracy. They want America to become a theocracy where they can have those rights to jail you or imprison you or silence you if you speak against their religion.
Yeah.
I don't think the only way they would ever accomplish that, it would have to be through war, because there's too many people or too many varying religions as well as non-religions that are in America that won't stand for that. And I know personally, militarily, you will have a civil war within the military if you try to do some shit like that.
Well, not only even that, but even many Christians don't want to live under Christian rule. because they see how awful it is. Many Christians do a lot of non-Christian things. Like most Americans, including Christians as well, watch porn, watch a lot of things that their religion says they shouldn't, even though the Bible is porn, like that verse in Ezekiel about how, Israel's lusting after her lovers with emissions like stallions and fallacies like donkeys. That's porn. I mean, you see that same scenario in any porn movie, but for some reasons Christians think that porn is okay as long as it's Bible,
Yeah, because Songs of Solomon is all kind of pornography. Yeah.
Oh, it's raunchy.
Yeah, when I first read that thoroughly and understood it, I was about 14, and I was like, "Damn, this is a sex novel right here."
Mm-hmm.
And going past her mountain peaks and down to where the rivers flow, and I was like,
it makes me think of like a lot of Prince's songs. You remember like that Prince song, "Mountains in the Sea"? God, I'm a huge Prince fan, by the way.
No doubt. No, I like Prince too. Mm-hmm. That was my guy. I liked him over Michael Jackson.
I can't say that I liked any of them over each other, but I love both of them to death. I love both Prince and Michael Jackson.
Nope, I don't like Michael Jackson.
Oh.
Nope, don't like him. He stopped being black.
Well, I mean, yeah, he did. Of course, I mean, he claimed it was due to vitiligo, though other people have different ideas.
I didn't buy that shit. I was a little kid and traumatized because I was dark skinned, and then I thought I had Michael Jackson as one of my guys, but then he started that bullshit.
He went white, yeah.
So nope, he don't like himself, so I couldn't like him.
Well, quite frankly, he is on tape. I mean, I think that there was evidence that Michael Jackson really didn't want to be black and had some internalized racism, because there were even he was bullied for being dark skinned and black. They said all kinds of awful things about his skin, his nose, and all them Jackson family got the same nose job. But like, I remember he's actually on tape, a recording of him saying, quote, "I hate my inward hair."
Yeah, see,
which is unfortunate.
Nope, couldn't deal with him. Couldn't deal with him at all. But I know I've had you on here for a while, so.
Well, thank you for having me on again, and I would love to talk to you again soon. Like, even more than just being able to because I know I say a lot of my info. I just had a really good time talking to you, and you're a great conversation.
Appreciate that. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Everybody go follow Maria's page.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, shit. Finally. Primer. My guy.
What's up, Coach? What we doing today, man? What we selling? Come on, bro.
I don't know.
What's up?
You must have heard me talking shit about you last week.
No, I wasn't tuned. Last week I was busy on my channel doing my stuff. God is good.
I was like, Primer always got some shit to say in the comments, but every time I go live and invite people on, he don't never show up.
No, actually, I'll be honest. Today's listen, I tune in when you're always on your porch, on your vacation, wherever you may be. But I never see you post any links. So I'll be honest. I was about to go sleep, and then I saw the channel on, and then it popped up, and I was like, "Hey, he got a link." So I said, "Let me come up, say hello."
It was a link on here last week when you was in.
No, last week I was busy on my channel. I put in maybe like 25 hours on my channel, man.
All right, I'm gonna let you slide only because you're here right now.
No, well, the thing is that I saw your board, so I'm late to the party, but I sort of tried to go back to see the fine points about your timeline.
What you got? What you got?
Well, I was sort of, I'm thinking, I said, Coach trying to be slick with it because he is saying part is okay. And now he's trying to say, well, anything beyond this point, is sort of suspect. So that's why I said,
I didn't say it was suspect. I said it was false. Suspect. Anything on this board related to the Bible prior to the reign of Hezekiah, there is zero proof of it.
Prior to where you put Hezekiah? What's the year?
I just, I put him generally. I put it at 800 BCE, but you know it ranges within the numbers of 800. So it's like
You put
834.
you put
Uh,
Hezekiah at 8? Really?
yeah, Hezekiah is around 800 BC. Is in the 800s
Uh-huh.
BCE area. I think he's like 850, 830, something like that.
Hezekiah wasn't.
No, not the old Hezekiah that you're thinking about.
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about the Hezekiah that had to deal with the Assyrians, the king of the northern Israelites.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I
The
got
Israelites.
my dates. All right, that's now. Let me just see. I think if you gotta go to like Second Kings chapter 18, you get a reference text somewhere there. But I do you one better. How about that today? So I've always been waiting for this time for us to just have a conversation.
Oh,
How about that?
I've been waiting.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna
Wait, hold on, no, because we're gonna settle this Hezekiah thing.
do.
Okay, can we agree
Uh-huh.
that Hezekiah was the king of northern Israel during the time frame of the Assyrian captivity?
The Assyrian siege.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I got Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser in 745. Second King 16, chapter 16, verse 7.
But he was fighting against Sennacherib.
Well, I'll tell you why
He mentioned Sennacherib, and Sennacherib mentions him in when you go to shit. What's the name of the
no,
city?
that's Tiglath-Pileser the third, right? Because some of them they got like 1, 2, 3. So you gotta kind of be. Let me just rephrase that. So I got the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser reference in Second Kings 16, 2 Kings 16, chapter 7 in 745, right? I got some info that we could chop up from there, but I will tell you what I've been doing, right? So when I saw your board, I was like, okay, this is my chance to pull out my little app. So if you say that we ain't got no, well, the thing is, that's what I'm saying. You slick with it because you said from about Hezekiah,
Oh,
about
you know what?
800,
I
you're okay with
misspoke.
it.
I misspoke.
Okay.
Sennacherib and Hezekiah will be around 700 BCE.
Oh, come on, coach. Come on.
Ashurbanipal was the dude around the 800s. When they
Ah.
did fight wars against each other, but they were not conquered until Sennacherib in the 700s. So
Oh,
actually, that makes your story worse, though, bro.
oh, come on.
It makes it worse. Then you have to start taking it back from the 700s on back. That's the
All right, coach. Here what we're gonna do. So for your community of skeptics, for all of your, the deconstruction, it's a nice thing. So here's what I'm gonna do for you, right? So I'm gonna use and now I'm gonna tell you it's a work in progress. I haven't finished, so it's just my basic how to put it, investigation of proof. So how about I put it up and then we can take a look at it. Now, you know me, I'm gonna turn on my cam. My cam is actually on, but I'm gonna switch it to my tablet, right? We cool, all right? So
even though we like faces, nobody ever wants to show their face, but go ahead.
Man, I be battling them Muslims. They want to dox me for the longest while. So here we go.
Where are you?
Oh well, I'm actually on the islands these days. I'm from the West Coast. Well, I live on the West Coast, I would say, but you could hear from my lingo. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from the islands.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a Trini.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, listen, you're one of the first. Well, the black people would get the pronunciation correct. It's the white folks they say, yeah. But that's just understandable. It's like a small island. Everybody knows Jamaica, but we're getting popular now. Don't worry.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So here's what we're gonna do, coach. I'm gonna turn on my tab, switch it up. All right. So I hope that's big enough. So here's I got a timeline app. I think I should have renamed it, but I got it named as Jeremiah Prophecy Timeline. So I've been doing my research, putting my stuff together. So here's what we're going to do. Now, in terms of scientific evidence, right? Scientific evidence where we just not going to use the Bible for us to come up with the dates. I got to produce some evidence that you and your community won't say, Primo always talking stuff. He ain't got no evidence, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So my first particular evidence would be, oh, let me just state my premise.
I made yours bigger so that everybody
Yeah,
sees yours.
no problem. Right. So the premise here is that for the scientific evidence, what I'll be using is the solar eclipse. So you know that solar eclipse are regular occurrences, meaning that over the thousands or hundreds of years, they happen, and NASA can predict, right, the
Mm-hmm.
day, the date, the time, the amount of coverage. That's why they're able to predict the one that happened last year, right?
Right.
So we know that over the Levant area, in where you would call, well, let me put it this way. When I say Levant, let me don't mix that up. So we got the different eclipses that would happen in places over like that were Babylon,
Mm-hmm.
and right. So NASA, if you go to the NASA page of the historical records of solar eclipses, right, you can actually view them as way back as whatever they have there, right? So in much of the Assyrian records, the Assyrians also recorded these eclipses. So part of the investigation in terms of how you can validate a date today is that you can use NASA's historical data, which nobody will say Prima is going to do anything. I have no control. The information is there. All I'm going to do is just use it. Okay. So if we go to 1075, which
Mm-hmm.
is, this is my date, right? And that's establishing from 1075, you get the Ugaric City solar eclipse. That's on May the 3rd, 1075. And these dates are, let me just put a caveat in so you don't feel I'm coming to trick anything. These are the solar time based on our current dates. So
Right.
it's not right. Okay, cool. Right. So we got our one in 1075. You can go to the NASA solar eclipse historical page and get all of these informations. I just list them on my timeline. 1036, we got a solar eclipse in Mesopotamia,
Mm-hmm.
January 1st, 1036. Now here's where it begins to get interesting. 841, we have Shalmaneser, the third siege of Damascus. Now, the inscription, and there's an inscription mentions Jehu of the house of Omri, who paid tribute to Shalmaneser, right? Oh, sorry, this is not an eclipse. This is just a record that would match that time frame. In terms of the Bible's correlating the time. So Shalmaneser II, the siege of Damascus, which is what you're kind of talking about with Ahaz and the rest of them with the Assyrians, right? Now, the big one is where I have asterisks. Those are the eclipses. So 763 would be a solar eclipse. They call it the Bur-Sukle eclipse. Forgive my pronunciation. That is dated to the 10th year of Asardan the third. That's on June 15, 1763. This is the main one, actually, because from this one, we can use this solar eclipse, right? Because it's an Assyrian eponym record. So
Okay.
it's not our information, it's not the Bible, it's literally the eponym record in the Assyrian historical records that say, hey, on this particular day, there was a solar eclipse. And so what they have done now is sort of rearrange the eponym records because of this particular piece of information that is in 763. It is one of the most important ones because it's the one that if you match the years that the reign of the kings, it matches up perfectly. It gives the date, the time, down to the second, everything. So
Okay.
that's 763. Now 745, we got Tiglath-Pileser, which would be the Assyrian king, and that's where we now get the Bible correlating in terms of the succession of the kings, right? And then you have Tiglath, then you have Shalmaneser, also known as Ulelu. Second Kings chapter 17, verse 13, 12th year of Ahaz of Judah. So we have a textual reference. And if you count the years from the eponym records of when the different kings arose, and some of these are historical records that are out there. I don't even have to go to the Bible. If you just go, you'll realize they begin to match up now. 722, we have Israel captured, which is what you were talking about, by Shalmaneser the fifth, right? That was the 6th year of King Hezekiah, 2 Kings chapter 18 and verse 10, right? And so from there, from the 763, right, historical record of that particular solar eclipse, if you begin to match the eponym records and also the Bible timeline, it begins to almost match up really perfectly. So on my timeline, I can go further down, and we can also get where it comes down to a little bit. I just go down just for reference. In terms of now matching up the Bible and the years, you get Israel captured in that time, 722. Then we got 640, Josiah made king. 609, Jehoiakim made king. Jehoahaz made kings. And these are years that are listed. I got another timeline that actually shows the years and the months between all of these. If you come down 606, third year of Jehoiakim reign. 605, 4th year of Jehoiakim, and all of these I got the scriptural passages to sort of match them up, and also the references. So like 4th year of Jehoiakim, we got 70 years prophecy. Jehoiachin made king, then Zedekiah. Well, we know Zedekiah in 597, he was the last king of Israel to sit on the throne before Nebuchadnezzar came. We know that in 586, which is a historical record outside of us, that you can get Babylonian records for that Jerusalem temple destroyed 586, fall of Babylon 539, that's by Cyrus, right? And then you come down, everything begins to more or less correlate once we have almost that 763 solar eclipse and that eponym record there that matches it if you match up all of the timelines together.
Right. Okay. So
now you don't have to respond today. You can go back, look at it.
No. Okay. So obviously,
right.
we have a failure to communicate.
Okay, let me see. I'm listening.
I will grant you that I put Hezekiah in the 800s when he really in the 700s.
Okay, cool. No problem. You say you misspoke. I can accept that. Yeah. And
then I will give you, because there is the obelisk about Jeru paying tithes to the Assyrian dude, which happened in the 800s. I will give you that.
Okay.
What I said was everything from the 800s or modern times.
Right.
You can validate that kings existed. You can validate that kingdoms existed. Right. Because it's not just the biblical record, but you have records from the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans. So you can validate that there were some people and some certain events happened. You cannot validate miracles happened. You cannot validate an angel killing 80,000 Assyrians. Those things cannot be validated. So you are proving my point of saying that from the 800s to modern times, there is some validity to the existence of these kingdoms and some of the people, especially those important people. But but going backwards,
right,
before that time frame, none of these other things have any proof. No Abraham, no Tower of Babel, no Noah, no Adam, Eve, none of those things. And a lot of these things supposedly are happening, but they're under the rule of either Egyptians or Sumerians, or they were congregated into all being Canaanites. So my statement, sir, was
no. Remember, I. That's what I'm saying. I said you were being slick. That's what I said. I said you're being, yeah, because you. Let me put it this way, right? The dates. Let's put it this way. If we even go back to, let's say, my point of 763, right, which would be from the Assyrians come forward, right? That's a lot of historical biblical history to just say, well, okay, before. I'm saying a lot of what takes place in the Bible from the 763 come forward down to Jesus Christ can now be articulated even outside of the scriptures by historical data from the scientists, not us.
okay.
Using their info.
I'm with you, but to a certain degree, I'm with you.
Okay.
Let me ask you this: as a Christian man, you believe that the Aztecs existed, right?
Yeah, man, we read Aztecs. When I'm from the Caribbean, we got Aztecs, Caribs, Arawaks.
So the Aztecs existed. We got proof of their constructions, their writing, all these things. Aztecs existed. Does Quetzalcoatl exist? Does that mean that Quetzalcoatl exists?
Listen, some of these civilizations, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yes or no?
No. What I'm saying is that I'm not too knowledgeable about the vast majority of all of these. So if you pick one that I might be too knowledgeable about, I'll just say, listen, if you say it is because I haven't.
Quetzalcoatl is their God/Jesus character.
Right.
Do you believe that Quetzalcoatl actually existed?
No, I'm not gonna believe in no pagan false gods. Come on, man.
Okay, but why not? We know the Aztecs existed. We know that the Cortez came there, and we know the pyramids were there. We know their writing was there. So we know that their calendar is very accurate. So the same way that you are saying all these other things are accurate in the timeline that we can validate, then you're saying that the timeline that we can't validate must still be true if we can validate all this other stuff.
Well, I didn't say that. I was getting to there, but I mean, I didn't get to saying that as yet. What I was just trying to provide is to say, well, much of the biblical history from, let's say, from 763 BC, which is a scientific reference point, that coming forward, that let's just say if the Bible was inaccurate, and I'm just using estimates and numbers, nobody has it really precise, but in terms of NASA, they got it down to the minutes, like, hey, this is how long the solar eclipse. So I agree,
and I'm gonna give you from 825 the Bible history from 825 as far as who might have been kings, who they were conquered by, those things I will give accuracy towards.
Okay.
I'm not giving accuracy to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being in a fire and they seeing the Son of Man in there with them, or Daniel interpreting a dream. There's no accuracy to that. That's belief.
Well, right. But what I'm saying is, so let's put it this way. I know when I'm talking to the atheist community, I don't bring up and I know that's what you guys like to bring up. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to use just historical and scientific data that is out there for the information that we have to prove, let's just say, the accuracy of chronology. So meaning, like, if it is, just as you were saying, if one part is wrong, right, or one part is right, well, okay, then we can clearly see that chronologically and historically that the Bible isn't inaccurate, that it follows a pattern of information, of historical data that can be tested and can be verified. So would you agree? Would you agree on that?
No, because you're trying you trying to be slick. You're trying to be slick now. Let me tell you how you're trying to be slick. Okay. You're trying to be slick by saying that the Bible is accurate based on scientific data because of the points that you're making with who was king and the eclipses and those sorts of things, and we can prove these aspects. But you take the term the Bible and make it one thing, as if to say, since this is correct, then the whole is correct. And
no, I didn't say no. You're playing with
the way you phrased it
No,
It
I'm
is.
saying the part, and this is what I'm saying. The parts where we can investigate and have reference points. So let's just say I'm using a point. That's why I say when you said 800, I say, okay, he being slick, right? Because we know from, let's say from 800 come down, right? That just as you say, if you check the archaeological evidence, now that we got the NASA solar eclipse, which I mean, they themselves say, "Hey, this is it. This is what it is."
I
So,
give you that. I
right,
give
and
you
I'm
that.
going to show you. I'm going to drop one more for because there's even another one that was so close that it's almost like yeah. So let's just say in 465, which is the death of Xerxes, right? There were actually two solar eclipses and the records are almost so clear. It's like right, and then even when we come down to Ezra, we get the Elephantine record. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct.
You did elephantine. Yeah.
Yeah, the Elephantine records, which was like a Jewish community, and people always say, "Hey, it didn't really have anything Jewish about it," but it also confirmed that there were certain characters that the Bible mentioned that can be now verified from their historical records, which people will say that the general archaeologists will say, well, they were Jewish people living in this place. They had some records. They had like a temple. They were doing their own thing, although there was a temple in Jerusalem. So now we can say, okay, I mean, this is like having Jews living outside and they doing their own thing, but they recorded it, and now it can be verified according to the timeline.
So let me ask you a question, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing. You obviously look at scientific data.
Mm-hmm.
Some scientific data supports the biblical record.
Okay.
But then there's so much scientific data that flies in contradiction to the biblical record.
Okay.
So why do you not look at it from that standpoint of saying that, well, although the Bible can show that, I mean, although science does demonstrate that these people within the Bible existed, it does not, science demonstrates that Noah's flood could not have happened. And Noah's flood certainly didn't happen in the timeline that it supposedly happened.
Right. So
that Adam and Eve could not have been the first people on the planet because the timeline of their creation, there were already humans on the planet.
Right. Now, you know, those are scientific unproven assumptions.
How are they unproven assumption? All those things are, I can prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt with science that Noah's flood never happened.
Well, some people say that, and then I always counter argue to say, well, they say it didn't happen, but show me that. They say that we say it happened, they say it didn't. And some of the questions that from on the channel, people, no, we're moving from a timeline. I don't want to shift the topic, but I'll roll with you, no problem. We chat. So I'm just saying that from the aspect of the flood of Noah. I think I've also told you in the chat many times and in the comments that, hey, that Noah's flood scientifically could have happened because, number one, and this is just one of mine I like to use, is that the water that caused the flood, part of it in scripture said it came from the deep, right? Right? You know the argument. And I'm saying no, scientifically, they have proven that there's more water that is in the crust. Wait, let me finish. That there is more water. If you go back, there's a BBC. You can search.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right? Since 10 years ago, they've been stating that there's more water in the surface. Go ahead.
They said, if you read that article and read the papers on that, they said that, first of all, they said, if.
No, it wasn't if.
I can't. They said if.
It was proven. They got a number for it.
No. People ran with it to say that it is proven, but they said if this rock, this type of rock that is holding this water, if all of it can, if there's enough of it, if they can find enough of it, then it would be enough water. But they have not found it to be present to the
it's proven. That's what I'm saying. Because listen, I got a friend I got a friend from my church. They drill they drill wells in Ethiopia in the desert, right? They come to church, ask for people to contribute and it's not just for church, it's like for villages, because back in Ethiopia they got like a different culture than whatever. But my point being is this, and what struck me was like, I mean, how do these people get water, in these dry, arid areas? But then I remember they say, like, we've been finding, which was another thing, we've been finding all of these archaeological crustacean, marine mammals in deserts, right? That some people feel that they were once, in some point in time, that there was water there. And then when I began to research it, it's like, that's how I came up with the article. And then I got a map of Africa, based on what the chap was telling me from church. And I'm like, okay, let me read into this. And there are places like Namibia and some of these places where they don't really have a lot of fresh water. And they were actually telling them, hey, you guys got a lot of water below the ground more than you have above. And if you just, if you're able to pull it out. So there's a map there of Africa. That's the one that I sort of looked at. And it's like, there are countries that's suffering for water right now, but they have huge reserves really deep in the ground. So that's one of my from scientific information, because I'm just saying it happened.
Okay, so one, just like the Sahara Desert wasn't always a desert. It was once a lush and green place. Our ecological environment changes constantly over tens of thousands of years. You say you lived in the West Coast. California used to have a lake. That whole California basin area used to be covered by water 10,000 years ago. So it is reasonable that you will find fossilized sea life or fish life in the California basin, which is now a desert. You will find sea life in there. You will find shells in the Himalayan mountains, because it's relatively a young mountain range that came out of the ocean when India crashed into the Asian continent hundreds of thousands, million years ago. So, but there are places like Kilimanjaro where there are no shells. It has never been covered by water. So when you look at it scientifically, you can't pick and choose the part that you like and say, oh,
no, but not cutting you across, Coach. But
every geologist says that there is not enough water in the earth, on the earth, below the earth to cover the earth.
Nah, come on, Coach.
I'm looking through stuff right now. Right now.
Come on, listen. The last time I went on an atheist channel, and we were having the Noah discussion. I got it on my channel. I got a video with them. They come up, tell me Noah story, it's a lie. It's not correct. Even the numbers, da 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 da. Then the guy pull up the evidence. I say, well, show me the evidence. The guy using ChatGPT. The guy wrote his own article, his own evidence, and forgot to take off ChatGPT on it.
Now,
Coach,
I mean, it doesn't matter if what you use, as long as what you use is accurate. Like, I will use Google in a heartbeat, right? But it's all, like I always tell people, it's not that Google is good or bad, it's how you use it. Right. What type of questions you ask will determine the quality of the answer. Yeah.
But Coach, that Kilimanjaro is not really like a huge, I mean, that's the African one. But if you go to the Himalayan and the Peruvian mountains, they pretty much taller than the Kilimanjaro ones. And the Peruvian is not
about height. I mean, it's one of the top mountains that people like to climb, but it's not about height. It's the fact that it's never been covered by water. See, unlike the Himalayas did rise up out of the water. But Kilimanjaro didn't rise up out of the water. But it's never been covered by water.
Yeah, but who is to say? Because some of the same surrounding countries is where you have deserts where you find the same marine archaeological evidence.
Because there was a lot of land that's been covered by water. Right. But what my point is, not the Noah's flood says every piece of land. 18 feet above the highest mountain was covered by water.
Right.
That is the impossible part, and that is what Kilimanjaro represents.
Right,
It
but
has never been covered by water.
right, but what I'm saying is we can.
Covered by water.
Okay, but my point being is that you're picking one that it doesn't, but we have examples of it in different hemispheres, different
But for the
continents.
Noah flood, all I need is one.
No, but what I'm saying is, yeah, but not. I mean, let's put it this way: if we in Peru, Peru has. You go to further north, to the Americas, the Grand Canyon, all of these places, you see the erosion to form those things happen rapidly. I've never heard no oceanographer, or what's the other guys who study those things?
Mainstream science says that the
hydrologists.
I'm doing a video about this tomorrow. Actually, I've been researching it. There, no geologist worth their salt is saying that the Grand Canyon happened through a flash flood. They are all
come on, coach. Because
it is a slow erosion process.
No, because how it is you're going to have slow erosion when you have the compaction of some of these different layers that are upright. They don't happen by gradual. It has to be something that happened really fast, and the occurrence, even for those stratified rock there, you can literally see.
I'm not saying that some floods didn't happen from time to time where the Grand Canyon is, but the formation of the Grand Canyon in its totality being because of the flood. And here's the other part that you have to be able to show, that it happened in and around 2400 BCE. Right. It all has to happen at the same time. And none of these things have happened at the same time. That's the other part that you got to be able to prove.
No, I'm pretty much, we got enough evidence that just the scientists. Listen, here's what my point has been. I use their information as it is, and we take it with a grain of salt. As some people would say, oh, you bias because you only use it when it would let's say factualize your narrative. And I'm saying, well, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what the other folks do anyhow. That's what they do, the other side. So why debar me from doing the same thing when I'm using your same evidence to tell you that, the information that we got in the scriptures is correct?
No, because you have to be above that. That's like the video I produced today where the dude was talking about, well, Islam is worse than Christianity, so that makes Christianity good. No, you have to be willing to say that if I'm going to say that this flood happens, I have to cover every base of the flood. And in order to cover every base of the flood, all geological evidence must show that the world was covered by water through this massive flood at one time, at the same time. Right. And that the entire world had to be covered at least by 18 feet at the same time.
And that's not is it impossible, coach?
No, it's been proven false, is my point.
No, my asking a true question. Is it possible?
No.
Why?
There's not enough, because there's not enough water on the planet, in the planet, above the planet to be able to cover all the land masses of the earth.
No, I'm thinking there's more than enough. No, I'm trying to remember how much the ratio is. And if I could be corrected, so don't let your people slice me up. Isn't it like 70% of the earth is covered by water?
70% is covered by water.
And if I'm wrong on the numbers,
No, you're right in the numbers, but even if you melted all of both polar caps, right, you still would not have enough water to cover the earth. Because first you got to recognize that the northern cap is mostly floating ice. So it has water displacement, so it's not going to make as big of a difference in changing the coastal sea line. The biggest area that's going to make the biggest difference is the ice that's on top of the landmass of Antarctica. But that's not enough ice to cover the earth. Right. It would raise it up to around 87%.
Right. And that's where we get the balance from the ones that below the ground.
And there's not enough water underneath. Yes. And the water that you're talking about that these geologists discovered is is under the ocean. And that water, in order to become liquid water, it wouldn't even make it into the ocean because it will become liquid water before it breaks the crust.
Mhm.
So it's not even enough. And they said if
No,
they
come on,
find
coach.
enough,
I'll bring some.
go find that article. Go
I'll
find
bring
that
some of
article.
the evidence that they got. But coming back to my scientific
Wait,
evidence now,
you're gonna have to give me
right?
like, I know I do this often in my videos because 2 hours and but give me
Yeah, I
5
know
minutes.
something you get tired. I'm tired. It's
No,
late.
no. Just give me 2 minutes. I gotta
Oh,
walk.
okay.
I
I
gotta.
will 1 sec. I'll hang with you. Let me see who in the comments in the meantime. We got 47 people on the live. 50 now. Let me see who else is here.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I grant you that.
I drink so much water throughout the day that two
But
hours.
yeah, I know you. But if you drink all that water and then you smoke all them cigars, it's not going to help you. I tell you, you gotta quit, man.
No, I will never quit that.
So, coach. So, based on my evidence, because you've been chiding me in the comments like more than a year now. I've been, tapping it out with you. So, my point being, now that we got a chance to speak, I presented my evidence based on the fact that from at least 1075, and I'm saying the main point, the main one, which is the 763, right? That's in the Assyrian eponym solar record. That is bulletproof. We can't interfere with that. That's nothing to do with the Bible. It's all in your hieroglyphics and everything there in the records. So no one can say, oh, it's the Bible creating the narrative. No, we got them saying it. We got NASA now confirming the date. The name of it is the Bur Sugle eclipse. Date 10th year of Asher Dan the third. It's June 15, 763. So I'm saying from that point, which is a scientific reference point, if you come down, all of the dates, all of the kings, much of the biblical texts now really fall in line with the chronology, the scriptures, and also now I pointed out one more that we sort of stopped off on, and that was the last one, the 465, which is Xerxes, the 300 guy. It says here cuneiform records his death was between two solar eclipses, right? So all we had was a date, right? But the records that say, okay, it was between these two solar eclipses that he died, and they actually stated it. And when you pull up the NASA records, we have it should have been 465 between June the 5th, and the other one would have been November 30th. So there were two solar eclipses in that year, lower down in the year, and their records say that he died in between two solar eclipses. Now, if I use that 465 and I just jump a few years later, right, to 457 BC, which is like in the Ezra restoration, then the timeline we can see, okay, that's 465, 65, that's 50. Let me just see, come down 60 and 3. That's about 8 years just from that those solar eclipses. We got the Ezra records because we got Ezra 7:14 decreed by King Artaxerxes, right? So I'm just saying, if we just have an 8 year from when we have a solar eclipse up to when we have a biblical record, 8 years is meaningless. And I'm just saying we got the information there to validate it. I'm just saying that 8 years is really negligible, but I'm just using the period based on the biblical text, which gives it about 8 years later when you match up the king's reign in terms of how much years they reign. And some of these are historical records outside of the Bible that can be verified. It says here, Ezra 7:1-14, decreed by King Artaxerxes, 465 to 424, confirmed by there's a I don't know how to pronounce this. It's Phiale, Philae, with an inscription with his name and his lineage. Also in Nehemiah 5:14. So what I'm confirming is the date, and also the archaeological evidence to support the timing in terms of the succession, right? So it confirms then Nehemiah's governorship, also the construction of the walls of Jerusalem. Now, this is important, right, Coach? Because if I could confirm 457, right? If I confirm 457, I know it's a lot, but let me just say this. If I confirm 457, what year would let's say we use for Jesus Christ's death? Could we use like 80-31, somewhere there about?
80-31.
Yeah, Jesus Christ's death on the cross.
Oh, you said AD. I thought you said like 80.
Yeah. We can use that as a reference.
It will be more in reference to line of when he was born, because either he was born around 6 BCE or he was born.
Well, I'm not worried about the birth, right? The death is more important because the death can be referenced, right? Now, from the biblical.
No, you can't really calculate the death without knowing the birth.
Well, let's put it this way.
How old was Jesus when he supposedly died? 33.
In terms, it was how old was he?
33.
33, right? 33 and a half, somewhere there, right?
So so you have to be able to say, when was he born? Was he?
I'm not worried about that.
Was he born according to Luke? Because those are varying degrees of birth.
No, so we got the names, but in terms of the dates, I'm not worried about the names and I'm worried. My concern is wait. Well, hear my point.
How can you accurately date something?
Hear my point. So then you can chop me up. So if it is, we can confirm, and I'm using a middle reference point, because some people can say 33, some people say 21, 31, some people say 28. So I'm using the middle point, which is 31. So 80-31, we have an average of Jesus' death on the cross. We can go to a lot of the Catholic Church commentators, I'm not worried about it. I'm just using a date. Right? So here's the thing. So if I go back to Daniel chapter 9, right? Daniel chapter 9. Wait. So I also have the time frame of Daniel as well. Yeah. If we go back to Daniel chapter 9 and we get the messianic prophecy of when the Messiah was supposed to come, which is the 70-week prophecy, if I just do a simple math on your phone, which is the 70-week prophecies, which is basically prophetic years, is 490, all right? 70 weeks multiplied by 70, 490 years from Daniel's prophecy. Let's do simple math. Simple. Let's take AD. We're going to have to take AD 27 because that's the reference point from when his ministry would have begun, because it's recorded in Luke, I think chapter 3, when it says in the 15th year of Tiberius. So that's AD 27, 28, anywhere on it. Let's lose 27 for argument's sake. 3 years ministry, Christ dies in AD 31, 3.5 years ministry, right? So that's how we get to 31. Follow me so far, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, right. So let's take AD 27 and minus 490 years from it. on your calculator. Let's do it quick. So
you say
simple
80
math,
what?
8027,
Uh-huh.
which would be around the 15th year
And you
of
said
Tiberius.
490?
490 minus how much? What year would we land at?
What is that? 373?
No,
I mean 473?
457.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Right. So 457 would now correlate with the Ezra temple wall city construction that is in 457 when Artaxerxes gave them the command to go and rebuild. No, the temple was rebuilt. This was the city. There was no walls. There was no da 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 da. And we know that because you could go through the Maccabean history and you could see there wasn't any walls. That's why Rome and all of these other people could have marched in. They really had. But anyhow, my point being is that the biblical reference in the 457 from Ezra's time and the pronouncement, if you add Daniel's prophecy, and that's the call from when the Messiah would appear, then we have a correlation of Jesus' ministry beginning in 2780. He dies in 31, 3.5 years ministry. If you minus the years back, it now matches up with Ezra's Jerusalem reconstruction under Ezra and Nehemiah. And then you go back now, the dates begin to correlate because I have all of the Elephantine. In fact, part of the historical record.
Wait, hold on. See, you keep saying a whole bunch of stuff, but you don't want to let me get in there.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just making my point.
Because here's the thing about that. Mm-hmm. It is very well accepted that the writers of writers of especially Matthew and Luke mm-hmm. had access to some of the old scrolls and some of the beliefs, and that they purposely wrote things in there to make the Jesus character of the Gospels fit into some of these prophecies. Everything from the virgin birth to the so-called crucifixion were easily written in to fit into that narrative. So just because they wrote that in there to fit into the narrative doesn't prove it, because you cannot actually literally prove that the Jesus character existed at that time frame.
Yes, Coach.
And therein lies the problem.
No, Coach, we got the historical records from Josephus.
Josephus is an interpolation. Josephus didn't write that.
We got Tacitus.
Tacitus is writing at 120. Tacitus is, hold on. Tacitus is writing that people believe this. Tacitus is not verifying Jesus existed.
No, he confirmed that. No, he confirmed that he was crucified under Tiberius the emperor.
No, he did not.
That's what he said in the record.
He said that that's what people believed.
No, he was writing a historical record of it, and he quoted Herod. He quoted Tiberius and says it was this. They crucified him. It says his name was Jesus Christus, and he was. I'm saying this.
Also talking about Tacitus, who was a propagandist for the Piso-Flavian family. Coach, that's like saying that I'm going to accept what Donald Trump's publicist says as to being true facts.
Right, but Coach, none of these are people who would be sympathetic gospel sources. So meaning that just as you said, well, and that was your claim that Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they basically cook the books. But when it comes to the external writers who ain't got a dog in the game, that they cook the books too. Come on.
Yeah, they do have a dog in the game. The Roman Empire is their dog. That's the dog that's in the game, because they were trying to subvert Jewish revolutions throughout the Roman Empire, because the Jews were still looking for a militaristic Messiah who would overthrow the Roman government. So they had a big dog in the game. But the other part about it is that these people are not writing based on anyone who actually had an eyewitness account of Jesus.
Right, but Coach, if we use that as a parameter, right, then what are we going to do with all of these people who write in nonsense all over the time and say, okay, this is 1 billion years, this is 100,000, this is 10. So what are we going to do with them now? They wasn't there to verify anything.
but there are other measurable scientific techniques like like linguistic archaeology can tell when something was written based on the style of writing and how they wrote things at certain time frames, so you can narrow down the era to which something was written.
Right, and I'm agreeing, and I'm using your standard.
But
sorry, go ahead.
But when we're talking about people like Tacitus also wrote that these people were superstitious and that they believed in this God man.
Right.
He was saying what people believed.
Right. But
what I'm saying happened, and you have no eyewitnesses of it. There's no Roman record of Yeshua, Jesus, being crucified on a cross and rising up. There's no Roman record of the 500 zombies that's supposed to be walking around.
Come on, coach. We listen. I've heard the atheist slant, and I got no problem.
It's not an atheist slant. First of all, I'm not an atheist. That's the first thing.
No. I'm not calling you that, and we have had that already.
How is that an atheist slant when it's just the truth?
It's not the truth, because what I'm saying is.
So where's the Roman record that proved that where they
hear my point. Hear what I'm saying.
Eyewitness record, not Tacitus, not Pliny.
Yeah, but coach, we can't move the goalposts.
That's not moving the goalposts.
No, because listen, what you're saying is that if you can't provide for me, right, a eyewitness record of a particular historical figure, right, based on the fact that the person who is reporting it is not an eyewitness, and I'm saying, well, okay, let's just do this. The people who report in the Gospels, right, two of them we can know for sure basically are eyewitnesses, but we don't take them. But let me finish.
How do we know for sure?
But then how do we know for sure anything?
No,
Alexander's
wait,
but what I'm saying is Alexander's history. Alexander's history comes 300 years after his exploits, right? 300 years after.
And I don't believe that Alexander has some miraculous birth, but we know that there are other things that let us know Alexander existed. We have coins that were minted at the time frame of Alexander. We have the people who he conquered admitting that he conquered them at their time frame. The Jewish people have records of them being conquered by the Greeks. People in the Indus Valley, records of them being conquered. The Egyptians, records of them being conquered by the Greeks. So when you have something,
but
you
coach,
can't compare Alexander.
Yeah, but coach, but that's no. We have Alexander's generals, right? Who comes after the Seleucids and the Ptolemies?
But they knew him.
Wait. From the time when Herodotus and Josephus, also who are contemporaries, reporting during the time, and I'm saying those years are not too far. Those years weren't too far behind. And I'm saying that they were reporting, let's say, for instance, Herodotus is reporting about Egyptian history thousands of years, and people take his own as Bible, as we would say. So I'm saying we can't be a double standard or hypocritical.
No, you're absolutely right. You can't,
right.
Which is why I wouldn't take Herodotus as being the sole reason to accept that Ptolemy existed in Alexander, and he was a general of Alexander. Right. I will accept that Ptolemy's own writings, Ptolemy's own pottery, Ptolemy's own coinage demonstrates that Ptolemy became the ruler of Egypt, and that Ptolemy then was an eyewitness to Alexander. But the Bible Gospels demonstrate zero eyewitnesses because, one, they were written decades, if not 100 years after the.
No, they all within the first 100 years. We know the latest would be.
The first 100 years. Still, that doesn't make it an eyewitness. That doesn't.
How do you mean it doesn't? We got two of the gospel writers.
Who? Name them. Matthew is not.
And John.
John was written like 90 to 120.
No, I'm talking about the authorship, not the time. John. No. Yeah, John is like 60 somewhere there. 60. All of them. Let's put it this way.
Wait. If John wrote it, then why did in 150 Justin Martyr refer to what is now known as John as one of the books of the apostles, the wisdom of the apostles? They didn't get their name until 180 when Irenaeus gave them those names. So if these were written by those authors, why weren't they called Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in 150? Why weren't they called that then? Why weren't they called that in those time frames? Why didn't Justin Martyr, who was a big advocate for Christianity, why didn't he call them by those names?
Yeah, well, we can't use one. If I could quote other church commentators that would give a different information. So I'm saying you're doing the same thing that we do. You pick. No, but wait. But here's the argument is the arguments are really based on the criterion, and that's what I'm trying to nail down. Is that you're just like you telling me that why believe this person because you can't verify if they are white, if they are an eyewitness. When I'm saying some of the very people who you all get the historical data from, I can make the same argument. Let's be fair.
You can. And if we're talking about but see, you keep comparing apples and oranges because you're talking about someone whose only proof is literature.
It's historical.
You're trying to compare that to people who also had coinage, who had pottery, who conquered nations, things of that nature. That's different. You can't compare Jesus and Julius Caesar or Alexander or Ptolemy or any of those people who have other things beyond just literature. You have to compare literature to literature. So you would have to be able to say, now, if we were making the fair comparison, then would be Hector of Troy compared to Jesus, or better yet, Achilles of Troy, Achilles, the Greek, who fought Hector, compared to Jesus. Because for Achilles, we have nothing but literature. That's it. So to believe that he was a demigod, that he was dipped into immortality or impenetrable skin by his mother, and she held on to his
ankle. Coach, anybody can put an inscription on a coin, and come on, we dealing with the Romans. They pagan.
No. That's like you saying, what do you call it if I went and I printed out some dollar bills right now and I had my face on it? Are you going to be able to spend that?
That's Coach Cash.
Are you? And that shit wouldn't work. And that wouldn't have worked in the Roman Empire. That wouldn't have worked in the Greek Empire.
No, it would work. No, I'll be fair. Well, I'll be fair with it. It can work. Wait, it can work. It's based on the weight and the material. You could have printed any coin. It didn't matter.
No, you could not. No, you could not.
The money wasn't based on whose face it was on. The money was based on the weightage and the material used. So
and it was also based on who supported that government.
No, but what I'm saying, because
show me the Pontius Pilate coin.
No, I can't. No, Coach. What I'm saying, wait, listen to my point, because I'll be technical. What I'm saying is, any country or any empire printed coins. All kings, the emperors, they put whatever they want, right? Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the exchange between nations, right, wasn't the fact that somebody's face was on the coin. It was of the fact that the coin was a particular material and it was a particular weight. So you could have
absolutely right, but that coinage would never be printed unless the rulership authorized it, and Alexander authorized it. Julius Caesar authorized it. Titus authorized it. Vespasian authorized it. Ptolemy authorized it. So therefore, those are their coins minted in the years of their reign, because that's what the normal process was for those kingdoms in that Mediterranean area, which includes Jerusalem, the Israel rather. So when you can't compare them to Jesus, is my point. I see your proof of Jesus beyond literature. Can we agree with that?
I'm gonna agree with it. I got no problem besides the writings and inscriptions that we have, right?
Literature is not valid proof of existence. If it is, then you have to then accept that Serapis. You know who Serapis is?
I'm tired, but go ahead. If I can't remember, because there's so many.
Serapis was the deity that is supposed to be Jesus that came before the Jesus-like character that was during that began during the Ptolemy reign in Egypt. Right. And Tacitus wrote that Vespasian, when he went to Egypt before coming to become the emperor of Rome, that Serapis had instructed him to step on this man's hand and he was healed from being lame, and to spit in some dirt, rub the dirt in the man's eye, and he stopped being blind. Tacitus wrote that as well. So if you're going to accept Tacitus's writings about Jesus as a god, and Tacitus also wrote that Serapis was a god, then you should accept.
No,
Serapis
I never said Tacitus wrote anything about Jesus.
But you're saying that Tacitus is proof of Jesus.
No. What I said is that we have external historical recorders that record that Jesus, the character from Nazareth and Jerusalem.
Are you saying that Tacitus is one of those recorders?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying, because he recorded.
Tacitus also recorded the.
Let me finish. Well, wait. Let me finish. I'm saying is
no. If you accept Tacitus as a historical accurate recorder of Jesus, and Tacitus also historically recorded Serapis,
right? But we know that's a pagan. That's a pagan god. We talking about a
human. Your and your confirmation.
No, it's not in my no.
That's confirmation bias.
No. What I'm saying is, I'm saying this, coach. If you tell me that Zeus was a god that the Romans believe in or the Greeks believe in, which one ever, I'm just saying that's what they say it is, right? And just like how is the same premise that you had earlier on when you just said, oh, this person just say, right? And I'm coming back using your own point. So my point is, all I said, and this was my words, I never said he said he was God. I never said anything like that. I said, you asked me, there's no proof, right, to show that the Jesus character, right? Because my evidence that I'm providing is a timeline, a chronological timeline to show that, hey, that Jesus existed during the time in terms of
you haven't proven that at all.
No, but I'm showing the timeline based on scientific evidence.
That's not scientific evidence, is my point.
The solar eclipse
is not scientific evidence.
No, I'm talking about having the solar eclipses, which we can now verify. And I'm saying if it is, we line up biblical scripture and the timeline, biblical chronology and timeline, that they match. And I'm saying that even if I go to the prophetic aspect of it, and I'm using Jesus' ministry beginning in AD 27 when Luke records in the 15th year of Tiberius the emperor, I'm saying, do we have external historical recorders that can say, okay, yes, there was a Jesus character, and these people they have no sympathy for the Jews, they have no bias, so they just recording whatever it is they want. There's no influence.
They do have biases.
Yeah,
and here's the thing, just because you can show that these people in the BCE era existed, doesn't mean that their prophecies are real, doesn't mean that their miracles are real, doesn't mean that any of their beliefs are real. It just means that these kings existed. Now, none of that proves that Daniel existed.
It does, because he's the ones providing the information.
What archaeological evidence that demonstrates that Daniel existed? Can you demonstrate that Hezekiah existed? Sure. Can you demonstrate that Jehu existed? Sure. But you cannot demonstrate Daniel existed. There's no.
We got Omri, David.
There's nothing. You can't even.
No, but coach, here's the point. But coach, here's the point, right? If it is that there's evidence to support certain characters that fall within a chronological timeline. I'm saying, let's take for a minute. We have to take with what we got, with what we can prove. So if it is, this is what we can prove, this is what we need to highlight. So just as you know from the different tablets and stones, that House of David, House of Omri, House of Jehu, that David, whatever the case may be, all I'm saying is that if it is that the Bible free, and we say, okay, from there, we find a point where it's chronologically correct and the timeline is correct, then, and we have external information to support it, then it's correct. And I'm saying, just from the basis of challenging
But you don't have it, though, is my point. You do not have it. The first part that you do not have is the fact that the writings of the Old Testament that does show that certain people existed doesn't prove Daniel existed. Now, what you do not have is that you cannot then say that because people are writing way after Daniel that they wrote about a character to exist to fit a story that has already been told, that doesn't work either as far as being factual, because that would be like how people do with the predictions of Nostradamus. Okay, we know Nostradamus wrote about this leader who would come up and he would conquer all throughout Europe and all these sorts of things. And then later on, people's like, oh, Nostradamus wrote about Hitler because he knew Hitler was coming. They take the vague prophecies and make it fit into a timeline of something that happens in their lives. Just like people run around talking about, oh, the California fires is God's wrath, or a prediction of the Euphrates River is drying up because the Bible says that it's going to dry up. So you can't take something from the old and make it fit into the now. And that's what the writers of Matthew and Luke were trying to do with the birth of Jesus. And then they tried to do it also with all four of them with the resurrection of Jesus. That is not facts. That's playwright and literature.
Go ahead.
And then when you look at these extra biblical, yes, they do have political agendas. Every historian has a political agenda based on where they are. If you get a history book in the Americas that was written in the 80s, the Soviet Union was the evil empire, and America, with the help of the Soviet Union, defeated the Germans. But you get an 80s history book in the Soviet Union, America was the evil empire, and America helped the Russians defeat the Germans. So historical people have a bias. Tacitus had a clear bias in that he was writing in favor of the Vespasian dynasty. And one of his main jobs was to make sure that the Julio-Claudians looked bad. And so that's why his narratives are such to make him look bad. This is the whole idea where Christians get that Nero was burning Christians for a light source.
So coach, and this is what I'm saying. We can be double standard or hypocritical in our critique.
You are
because
the one.
Wait, let me finish. Let me just land quick. Because my point being, in the Bible, we have open records, meaning that you have different writers, Daniel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Hezekiah, Ezra, all of these historical recorders with prophetic as it being scripture. But when you go to the Egyptian records, you're talking about, it's biased. The Egyptians more biased than anybody because they never lose a battle.
Yes, they do.
None of them.
They tell you when they lost to the Hyksos.
No, you got tons of pages with how many, and even in the Egyptian records, they got when the kings come and they bow down to them and they're recording biblical history that's matching up. People don't call it out, but anyhow, let's leave it at that.
Biblical history and the Egyptians, they don't match.
So
the
no.
Don't even mention the Israelite ever.
I'm talking.
Except in the Menephtah
Except right. So good. So here's my point.
They didn't say a king. They said in the Menephtah, he said he conquered a group of people called Israelites. That's it. Nothing else.
So was there a kingdom called that had a people that were Jewish and they were called Israelites, or which one ever you just said? So here's my point. The Egyptians in biblical scripture, you hear Saul lost or David lost a battle and then he won. You had different kings, they get conquered. They just recorded the scriptures. If it is that we have some type of bias for writing historical records, then they ain't gonna put in that they lost and they went into captivity. But hear my point. The other kingdoms and empires that were around, they always put up only the good stuff. So they got a bias just as well.
No, they didn't. And just
come on, coach.
No, they. If you look at the Egyptian record, the Egyptians talk about when they lost to the Hyksos. They talk about when they were defeated by the Cushite people. The Egyptians talk about
Right.
their defeats, but is everybody?
Wait. But how is that? How is that recorded?
They recorded it.
So you're right. So no, because
You can read. You can
successive
see
case.
it.
Wait,
Have you ever been to Egypt?
no, I haven't.
Because
I hope to be.
it's on the Meta Netures.
Yeah,
It's
I
on
know.
their hieroglyphs. It's on their walls.
Right,
That
but
they
here's my
lost
point. No,
to
but
those
here's my
people.
right. So here's my point. It is only when the foreign rulers comes in and they say, "Hey, right, our history up there too, just like you got yours." so, my point being, all of these other civilizations had their biases. You can't just blame
So you're
and
saying the
say,
Bible? So you're saying the Bible got biases then, right?
"Of course, I'm not saying no. I never said
Right.
no." But I'm just saying, if you're criticizing us,
they
yeah.
also we also know that Isaiah was not written by Isaiah. Part of Isaiah was written at the beginning of the Babylonian captivity. Some of it was written during the Babylonian captivity, and then some of it was written after the Babylonian captivity. Isaiah didn't write the whole thing. Daniel didn't write the whole thing. It was written by other people. It was pseudographical. It was written by other people as well. So none of them, you can't, they're not the same writer. So that
we don't have any evidence.
The idea that them
That's
and their
coach. That's
gifts.
propaganda. They ain't got no records to say that it was. They looked at the different chapters and they classified it and said, okay, these chapters
they look at the language. It's about linguistic archaeology. Mm-hmm. They look at how things.
They know archaeology in them linguistic. Come on, coach.
What, dude? Are you serious?
I'm talking about the linguistic the linguistic style, because that's what they pointed out.
Right. That's linguistic archaeology is able to show the different. You can tell a time frame of a people based on how things are written. Just like there was a certain Atlantic accent way of speaking that was going on in the Americas in the early 1900s. We don't speak that way right now. But if you go read a book that was written back then, that book may be written in that Atlantic style of writing. So if somebody presented you that book and you say, well, when was this written? And you didn't see the copyright date, a linguistic archaeologist would be able to look at the style that it was written and say, oh, this had to have been written somewhere around, the 1910s, the 1920s, because of the style of writing. And it was more than likely written in the northeast region of the United States, because we can tell the style of writing.
Right. But
right?
my point is
strictly at Isaiah, they can do the same thing.
No, but my point is that the arguments for the books of Isaiah, maybe even Jeremiah to some extent, who again, and well, some people say Daniel as well, for like the last 10, 11, 12. So they say, as you saying, so somebody comes after they added, or they chop up the book and then copy it and add some stuff for it. My point has been this: all of those things has been suppositions, and there's no real evidence to say the truth. We have heard the arguments that people have been arguing them over the years, but there's no concise refutation to say that it's not one author. What we have is different chapters that may have a different particular how to put it, sway of language or style, but it's not to say that it's not Hebrew. All of it was the same Hebrew. The Hebrew doesn't change. So
it does. Just like American. I'll
give you the example.
American English today is not the same American English that I spoke when I was a teenager. I'm 53 years old, and it's changed since then.
Right. So here's the argument, right? So let's see if I can remember Isaiah for a simple example. Right? So you got like the first 16 chapters that deals with a particular message. Then from 17 go up, I think, to 27. There's like a whole bunch of kingdoms that he's talking about, and they're gonna get refuted. Then from 20 something, 30 something, and then you move from. So, but I'm saying they sort of chunked up, but they deal with different. I would also say they deal with different time frames, and I'm not gonna shy away from that, because Isaiah seemed to have him and Daniel seem to live pretty long. So, I mean, it's like, okay, fine, no problem. So there is a passage of time, and you can see there's a different message based on the passage of time. So let's say, for instance, Jeremiah was before Jeremiah saw all of Josiah's children as kings, right? He then experienced the capture of
You
Israel
know,
by
I, I got
Nebuchadnezzar.
I got to stop you. I got to stop you because
Mhm.
all of that is belief at the end of the day. It is not
No, but,
factual.
but what I'm no,
No. I got to, and I also got to stop you because it's about 3 hours, and
yeah, okay, no
this is
problem.
way past the time frame that I ever stay on because I have a wife, and this is past 3 hours. I just looked at the clock and saw that,
Yeah, it's okay. We could.
and the other part is that we're just going in circles here because
Yeah. I know because I
you
got the
have,
same arguments against you as well. So no
you
problem.
you have your belief, and that's fine. You are fine to have your belief.
and and
That's
you know
on.
I've said, Coach, me and you gonna chop it up, but at least
Yeah.
I'm glad we can have a
But
conversation.
the last thing I'm gonna say for Ali, because I am
Let
the
me see
host,
where you
and
cooking.
I'm the host, and I get the last word.
Oh yeah. You got the last say. So here's what I'm gonna ask, right? I'm just gonna ask one thing.
No, you don't get to choose my last
No,
word.
no. I'm asking a request, not a question. So I'm just gonna ask, since I was a humble guest on your show, if I could restream the conversation on my channel just for edification. My channel is not monetized, so I don't get anything from it. So is that
As
okay?
as long as you don't chop it up.
No. I don't chop it up. I leave it just as it is. People
Okay,
know me.
no,
Yeah,
that's
so
fine.
I'm cool.
That's
All right,
fine.
cool. All right, go ahead. Shoot your shot now.
The last thing from the
Uh-huh.
article by which we was talking about water under the earth.
Give me the reference. Give me the reference. I look it up. So
Um,
I don't trust the people on the other side. They often write their own evidence and make up.
no, this is
No,
directly.
I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying my experience is like, hey, give me the reference, and then I look it up, and then we can always come back and we could re-report on it.
Well, first let me read this part because I have to scroll back up to get to that part.
Okay, go ahead.
But
Shoot.
according to the paper, the document that was submitted by the scientists, through meticulous analysis of this data, the researchers concluded that these waves were interacting with the water held in the ringwoodite, and that's the rock that you were talking about,
Yeah.
to offer some perspective on the sheer volume of this subterranean water body. If the ringwoodite rock contained a mere 1% of water, the earth crust would shelter a water volume thrice that of the oceans combined on its surface.
Good. Nice. Right.
So I guess you just missed that whole if part, right?
No, it's science. Just like people say, oh, if it was 10 billion years ago, but
If
you take out the if and say it's 10.
If the ringwoodite rock holds the water, it's because they have not they haven't analyzed enough ringwoodite rock to say that it has 3 times the water on the earth. It said if 1%, meaning that they haven't even discovered 1% of the ringwoodite rock that holds water. That out of all the ringwoodite rock they've hit, they haven't seen 1% of it holding water. They're saying if it does, and it has not. And that's the point. That it's an if. So you cannot claim.
Give me the link and I'll go find it back and I'll look at, because I know I read it a couple of times. But since you got the last say, but you know, one of the other
this particular article was republished by the Brighter Side, the Brighter Side News republished the article citing the.
I use the BBC. There's Wayhon, and BBC had carried that. They got like a 10-minute.
I did see it. I did see it on the BBC site before.
BBC and Wehon, they carried it, and
the Brighter Side just basically copied and pasted the same damn article.
I don't know if I don't trust them, but I trust the news media to some extent. But I'll look it up again and reference. But I know what it. I read it. But you know,
the same article was also published by the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel published the same article written by Jacobson, who is the scientist who is leading the research on that. So the Weather Channel published it. I didn't read the Weather Channel's one yet.
I no problem. I get your point. No problem. I give you a joke just before we go to close off. So I was having this conversation. What's the name of the guy? The guy's channel is what they call him, Community of Skeptics. I don't know if you know him. So I went on his channel and we were having the same Noah discussion, right? And the guy brings up all of this, evidence to show that, it wasn't. But the thing was, we were arguing over the population growth numbers, that if it is from Noah's time till now, what should the population be? So the guy brings up his evidence. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't know. Only to realize he create his own ChatGPT stuff. So, but it was funny, right? But anyhow, coach, let me leave you. I see the wife come for you now. So,
y'all, yeah. How did y'all see her come in here?
Because you talking to her, you face she the only person gonna come mess with you. So I've seen her before online. I mean, I've seen her.
You stalking my wife, man? You stalking my wife? You stalking my wife? Nah, just
I tell you, I come up in your meeting and with my Bible and start to preach. You ban me. You say don't come.
All right, but I gotta go.
Yeah.
For everybody and you, I will be live again tomorrow.
Tomorrow, what time? Not this time though.
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Man,
I have no idea what the subject matter is going to be about.
Okay.
So I just
all right. But now that you have spoken to me, and we can close off with this, 30 seconds. Now that you have spoken to me, now you realize, who you've been chatting with for at least a year now.
Yeah, it's good.
And when I bring it, I bring my evidence.
Now one day, because I didn't. Your voice threw me off. I didn't know you was Trinidadian.
So okay.
It was like, oh shit. Okay.
Now we good. We nice people, man. You must know us.
And
man.
You say you're on the west. Yeah, Trinidadian is a nice. I've never met a bad one. You're on the West Coast.
Yeah, actually, I'm back in Trinidad right now. I'm on holiday and so I'm doing some stuff with the other stuff that I talked about that I do.
But where do you live?
San Jose. Good. I'm giving away too much. The Muslims gonna find me, man.
Man, you'll be all right. You're right. Actually, I was asking that question because oftentimes when we travel, I like if people are somewhere where we travel,
right?
I like to meet them.
Yeah. No. I don't think you came across my area. I've heard when you put up your itinerary.
No, we're thinking about going to San Francisco sometime this year.
Okay. You go by the bridge. Don't go by the bridge and jump off though.
Yeah, shit.
Anyway,
all right, I gotta go.
Have a good one. Have a good night.
I will see y'all tomorrow night. Y'all have a great one, and thanks
for having me.
Here.
Yeah, okay.
All right.